As the morning fog gently lifts over the Thames, it reveals not only the splendid panorama of the ever-changing London skyline, but also the subtle yet unalterable influence of its old money families. Each lineage, often enigmatic and always influential, is the silent custodian of the history of Albion, with their legacy intricately woven into the very essence of London's identity. Undoubtedly, their world is one of understated elegance and discreet power, shaping everything from Britain's political corridors to cultural institutions. Today, join us as we venture into the heart of old money London, where millennium-old traditions and seemingly endless wealth have forged a unique societal echelon. As we journey through their ancestral homes and into their exclusive circles, we'll discover a lavish mosaic of history, power, and tradition that has quietly steered the course of this great city. This is a story of legacy, where the past and present merge, revealing the enduring influence of old money on the capital where the sun will never set. Imagine for a moment you are a tourist in London, the seemingly endless metropolis resonant with a vivacious pulse and twinkling city lights, where ancient stone streets whisper tales of yesteryear and modern skyscrapers soar into the vast cerulean skyline. Indeed, on your journey to our sumptuous capital, you'll likely find yourself strolling by iconic landmarks, such as the stately Buckingham Palace, the majestic Tower of London, or the illuminated London Eye, all images that immortalize the city's indomitable spirit. Yet as you wander these serpentine streets, there's a high likelihood that you're stepping on property owned by a quintessentially British family, an embodiment of the old money stature. They're the unseen marionettists pulling the strings of London's property scene, their sprawling holdings defining the essence of the city. For instance, this covert dynasty owns an astonishing 50% of the prestigious district of Mayfair, including the freeholds of the American Embassy, the Beaumont Hotel, and the Gagosian Gallery. Moreover, their sway extends over 300 acres of the wildly opulent Belgravia area, renowned for its extravagant properties. But the vast stretches of their power and influence within Albion don't just stop there. These old money English nobles have held significant sway in British society for, believe it or not, almost 1,000 years. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, we'll unveil the captivating narrative of the Grosvenors, an English family whose grasp on London's real estate is as profound as their millennia-old impact on British society. The Grosvenor family's will to power shockingly stretches back to the very beginnings of what we know as modern Britain, with their fierce ancestor Hugh Lupus being renowned as the chief huntsman to none other than William the Conqueror. His ceaseless wolf-like tenacity in shielding Cheshire from the Welsh invaders won him the coveted lands in the highly consequential year of 1066. Known endearingly as Fat Hugh, his merry crest showcased a laughing dog, an emblem which would soon yield another immense tie in Grosvenor family lore to British history, as this ancestor's crest became the muse for Lewis Carroll's unforgettable Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Now, the family's rise to power within the nobility began with the stalwart Sir Richard Grosvenor, the first baronet, who made his grand entrance into the world on a crisp, frost-bitten January morning in 1585. After an Oxford education and position as the High Sheriff of Cheshire, Sir Richard leveraged his growing power to become knighted by King James I on a bright summer day in 1617 amidst the verdant, tranquil Vale Royal. To put this into perspective, this ancestor of the Grosvenor Empire was being knighted at the same time Shakespeare was alive and the King James Bible emerged. Now, Sir Richard further won the affections and votes of the public as a charismatic Member of Parliament for Cheshire in 1621 and acquired the prestigious baronet's title a year later. In fact, his eloquently penned diary entries from the time are still read in the 21st century as invaluable nuggets of historical wisdom. The Grosvenor family legacy was furthered by the intrepid Sir Richard Grosvenor, the second baronet, a staunch royalist during the turbulent Civil War. As the High Sheriff of Cheshire in 1643, the same position his father held, he ousted Parliament supporters from the chaotic Battle of Edgehill, standing firmly by his beliefs. He later joined forces with the stalwart Sir George Booth in the unsuccessful but audacious Royalist uprising of 1659. Succession brought forth the visionary Sir Thomas Grosvenor, the third baronet, who paved the way for their sprawling property empire. He masterminded the construction of an impressive residence where the majestic Eaton Hall in Cheshire stands today. The massive estate, adorned with manicured gardens, fertile farmland, lush woodlands and expansive parkland, contributed greatly to the growth of the illustrious Grosvenor dynasty and the prosperity of the Cheshire community. In 1677, when Sir Thomas married the elegant Mary Davies, her dowry, Ebury, bolstered the Grosvenors' expanding landholdings. This humble 500-acre patch of meadows and marshland underwent a dramatic transformation into the opulent districts of Mayfair and Belgravia. As London grew and spread its wings westwards, the Grosvenor family would wisely harness this potential and shape the city's most prestigious neighbourhoods. Now, the first modern Grosvenor, Hugh Lupus, the first Duke of Westminster, was a titan of Victorian society, acclaimed not only as a formidable landowner and astute politician, but also as an ardent racehorse aficionado. His substantial influence over London's wealthiest neighbourhoods began unfolding in the mid-1800s. You see, through strategic investment and visionary leadership, the Duke had capitalised on the shifting dynamics of the late 19th century economy. Many aristocratic families struggled to adapt to the decline of the agricultural economy. However, the Grosvenors, through a fortunate turn of events, found themselves at the heart of London's rapid urban expansion. As the Duke poured his substantial fortune into further development, under his shrewd guidance, the transformation of one of London's most exclusive districts, Belgravia, began. The marshy tracts of Mayfair were also transformed into luxurious residences. By doing so, they turned these areas, along with Pimlico, into some of London's most sought-after addresses. Furthermore, in 1852, his connection to the British monarchy was cemented when he married his cousin, Lady Constance Sutherland Leveson Gower, in a ceremony at St James's Palace, attended by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. This event established the foundation for Grosvenor's close association with the Queen, given his mother-in-law's favoured standing within the royal court. Building on this connection, the first significant milestone of the Grosvenor family's ascension to the pinnacle of Britain's influential elites occurred in 1874. That year, Queen Victoria likely recognised the vital role that the Grosvenors played in transforming London's cityscape, and as a result, bestowed upon Hugh Grosvenor the prestigious title of Duke of Westminster. Additionally, as the 20th century dawned, the family's holdings continued to grow, acquiring more properties in Scotland and elsewhere. The Grosvenor family's vast wealth and prominence in British society thus spoke to their strategic acumen, visionary leadership, and the fortunate circumstances of their time. Now Hugh's son, Gerald Cavendish Grosvenor, the 6th Duke of Westminster, cultivated an even unprecedented fortune, skillfully steering the modern Grosvenor Empire to new heights of affluence and influence. By his time, the name Grosvenor had become a byword for first-class real estate, and in the post-war era of the 1950s, the Grosvenor domain would burgeon beyond the borders of its London heartland. Presiding over the Grosvenor Group, Gerald first guided the company as its chairman. In the inaugural edition of the Sunday Times Rich List, published in 1989, he was placed as the second wealthiest person in the United Kingdom, boasting a staggering fortune of £3.2 billion, an eye-watering £8.47 billion in today's terms. Only Queen Elizabeth II herself surpassed him. Thus, Gerald Grosvenor's visionary leadership heralded an era of significant expansion and diversification for the Grosvenor Group. The company broadened its property portfolio across multiple sectors and locales, specializing in urban property, food and ag-tech, and rural estates. Its urban property ventures included the development and management of vibrant urban sites, such as the American capital Washington, D.C., where the Grosvenor presence had been instrumental in the city's renaissance since 1988. Simultaneously, the Grosvenor food and ag-tech sector spearheaded investment in companies transforming the world of food and agriculture for the better. With a veteran investment team, they expertly managed a portfolio of over 25 companies, ushering in positive change in food and farming with a focus on human health, environmental sustainability, and economic viability. In rural estates, Grosvenor handled a plethora of agricultural, residential, and commercial properties spread across rural Cheshire and parts of Chester city centre. Thus, the modern Grosvenor Empire was a masterclass in not only wealth preservation, but expansion and social acuity, as they shrewdly modulated from minor nobility to some of the monarchy's closest confidants and business partners. However, the lustrous history of the Grosvenor lineage, like many old money families, is not devoid of shadows. Behind the opulence and majesty, elements of controversy often lurk, tainting the family's well-polished image. In the late 2000s, a scandal of a distinctly dissolute nature embroiled Gerald Cavendish Grosvenor, the 6th Duke of Westminster. Come 2008, media outlets were abuzz with stories associating him with the notorious Emperor's Club VIP, a high-end call-girl ring at the heart of New York Governor Eliot Spitzer's downfall. Reports insinuated that despite the vast Grosvenor fortune, the Duke was uncharacteristically tight-fisted, choosing to bargain with an Emperor's Club girl over their liaison's cost. This unexpected revelation somewhat marred the family's prestige, sparking a wave of gossip among the British elite. But this unsavory encounter with the Emperor's Club was not the only time the Grosvenor family's name was tarnished. A few years later, the infamous Paradise Papers implicated the family in another scandal. The leaked documents, which unveiled an extensive network of offshore tax havens used by the world's wealthy and influential figures, indicated that the Grosvenors had channeled dividends worth millions into concealed offshore companies. This startling disclosure traced back to 1999 and suggested that these offshore entities controlled approximately half of the shares in a subsidiary company managing the Grosvenors' North American and Australian ventures. The intricate offshore arrangement aimed to reduce tax liabilities, igniting public furor and raising serious ethical questions about the family's financial dealings. Moreover, in 2019, Hugh Grosvenor, the Duke of Westminster, faced severe backlash and accusations of so-called social cleansing. This controversy emerged when his property group, Grosvenor, planned to raze Walden House in Belgravia, London, to make way for a plush new development. This proposition threatened to displace 40 families from their council homes, with some residents having inhabited them for up to 40 years. The plans sparked public indignation, resulting in a petition opposing the eviction gathering over 180,000 signatures. In response to the public outcry, Westminster City Council announced that all tenants would receive new social housing on the site, effectively averting the eviction. Grosvenor refuted the social cleansing allegations, asserting that such language contradicted their business ethos. Despite this, the controversy underscored the escalating concerns around the impact of luxury property developments on London's working-class communities. Now, navigating the 21st century, the Grosvenor family maintains a commanding and influential presence, their wealth predominantly rooted in their enormous land and property assets. Within London, the family's ownership comprises half of Mayfair, encompassing freeholds of the American Embassy, the Beaumont Hotel, and the Gagosian Gallery, along with 300 acres of Belgravia. Several other properties within the area include the Biscuit Factory in Bermondsey, St Mark's in Mayfair, and Eaton Square in Belgravia. Their holdings also extend to the Eaton Estate in Cheshire, the Abbey Stead Estate in Lancashire, and additional estates in Scotland and Spain. Indeed, the family's property enterprise, the Grosvenor Group, remains a driving force in urban property development and investment across many of the world's premier cities. They showcase considerable expertise in handling listed buildings and developing new properties, often investing in community-oriented features like sports facilities and shopping centres. Internationally, their holdings comprise notable assets in various locations. In Canada, they possess Annacis Island, a vast 485-hectare property nestled in Vancouver's Fraser River. In the United States, Grosvenor Americas focuses on property development and investment, with diverse projects spread across the nation. Over in Hong Kong, the Grosvenor Group has invested in luxury homes development through a Bermuda entity, Grosvenor Land Property Fund Limited. Additionally, the Grosvenor Group boasts investments across various European countries, including France, Spain, and Portugal. Now, the current family figurehead is Hugh Grosvenor, the 7th Duke of Westminster, with a net worth nearing a staggering $12.5 billion. Known for his youthful charm, Hugh Grosvenor has been described as having been born with the longest silver spoon anyone can have. Despite his colossal wealth and privilege, in true old money fashion, he favors a low-key lifestyle, avoiding public scrutiny. His close friendship with Prince William extends to him being the godfather to Prince George, a symbol of the close ties between the Grosvenor and royal families. Furthermore, this connection extends further, as the Grosvenors have long been closely allied with the royal family, with the 7th Duke of Westminster being one of King Charles's 33 godchildren. Regarding the fairer sex, one of the Grosvenor family's most influential women today is Lady Edwina Grosvenor, the sister of the 7th Duke of Westminster. Born into exceptional wealth and privilege, she has chosen a path of philanthropy and prison reform. As the founder and chair of One Small Thing, an organization that collaborates with prisoners and staff in male and female prisons, and a founding investor and ambassador of the Clink restaurant chain, which prepares prisoners for the catering industry, Lady Edwina's efforts in prison reform and dedication to philanthropy have been said to underline her commitment to harnessing her influence and resources for societal betterment. Thus, through centuries of strategic decisions, visionary leadership and the convergence of destiny, the Grosvenors have transformed from stalwart knights of the British realm since the days of William the Conqueror to the modern, old money British family that owns the richest parts of London. When you stroll through the cobblestone streets of West London, you're immediately enveloped in a world of sumptuous wealth and wallet-emptying luxury. Majestic townhouses stand tall, seemingly watching over avenues adorned with exotic cars and bespoke boutiques. Tourists and locals alike revel in the shadow of iconic landmarks, beckoning for a rendezvous under their gilded entrances. And yet this region, synonymous with timeless sophistication, velvet rope exclusivity, and a certain elegant flair, wasn't always the Instagram highlight reel of affluence you see today. Before the transformative touch of the old money aristocratic family we'll discuss here today, areas like Chelsea and Knightsbridge were far removed from the well-heeled paradises they are now. They were vast stretches of spotty farmland, modest cottages, and the far cry of livestock echoing in the distance. Indeed, they were a stark contrast to the cosmopolitan wonderlands of West London that have become playgrounds for the world's elite. Thus, who were the architects of this grand transformation, turning barren, underdeveloped lands into a real estate empire and setting the gold standard for opulence in our lovely capital? In today's video, we'll answer that and so much more as we give you the good, the bad and the luxury of the Cadogan family, a lineage that shaped not just the geography but the very architectural essence of some of London's most iconic old money districts. The origins of the Cadogan mega-empire we know today begin in the mist-shrouded crags of Ireland in the year 1671. Here, history would see the birth of William Cadogan, a figure shaped for a destiny replete with intrigues and complexities. Born to Henry Cadogan, a barrister, the Cadogan paternal line had a background that wasn't limited to the courtroom. Henry's lineage, in fact, was tinged with the gunpowder and steel of the English Civil War. His father, William's grandfather, had worn the no-nonsense attire of Oliver Cromwell's New Model Army, an outfit that didn't just change the rules of engagement in Britain, it rewrote them entirely. And we mustn't forget the first matriarch of the Cadogan family, Bridget Waller, William's mother. Her own father, Sir Hardress Waller, had executed a different kind of verdict, one that led to the beheading of King Charles I and shook the very thrones of England. Thus, in a parallel vein to one of the other mighty old money real estate families of London we've discussed on this channel, the Grosvenors, who boast a military lineage reaching back to William the Conqueror, the Cadogans too had war in their blood. The key distinction, however, was the specific chapter in which the Cadogans had penned their military involvements, the tumultuous, landscape-altering English Civil War. Thus, it was as if William Cadogan, from his first breath as the leader in a centuries-long dynasty of familial power, was destined for grand maneuvers. As the wheel of time turned, the Cadogan name would be etched into an unexpected sector of society: real estate. Vast expanses of prime West London property would eventually come under their purview, a monumental shift from the families of military and political machinations, yet a continuation of a legacy of influence and grand strategy. You see, in the societal context of the 1600s and 1700s, land was more than dirt and grass. It was the currency of power. But William Cadogan and his contemporaries didn't merely hoard patches of earth. Their properties extended to County Limerick in Ireland, positioning them as strategic entities in the Irish theatre, although they were of primarily Welsh heritage. Destined for the world of law, young William found himself at Westminster School under the scrutinising eyes of Richard Busby. Yet fate had a penchant for irony, and the Glorious Revolution of 1688 scrambled all pre-existing plans. William of Orange dethroned James II, slicing Ireland into fiercely divided factions. The Cadogans, staunch Protestants that they were, threw in their lot with William of Orange. They didn't merely offer support, They amplified the ranks of the Army of the North. William Cadogan enlisted not as a common soldier but as a cornet of dragoons, a position reserved for the audacious. He was, after all, a Cadogan, and Cadogans don't just participate, they revolutionize. Furthermore, if ambition were currency, William was a tycoon. He gravitated toward the Duke of Marlborough, a maestro of politics and strategy. They were not merely allies but co-authors of a narrative that would culminate in William entering politics in 1705. Holding his post in the Houses of Commons until 1716, his tenacity was formally acknowledged. He ascended to the peerage, becoming Baron Cadogan, his deeds and alliances with figures like Marlborough cementing this honour. Thus, history transforming William to Baron Cadogan wasn't merely an upgrade, it was a metamorphosis. Years of cunning and daring crystallised into a title that had its own gravity in the halls of British power. Therefore, the Cadogan name was not only inked into the ledgers of British elite, but was poised to dominate the affluent enclaves of West London. But that transition, viewers, was only the prologue. Ahead lay a landscape of stone and steel, ripe for a new kind of conquest. Now, as the 18th century began, the Cadogan dynasty was on an unstoppable trajectory, each strategic decision marking another square on a chessboard of affluence and influence. A member of the family's marriage with Elizabeth Sloane in 1717 was thus more than a mere blending of two blue-blooded families. It was a quantum leap, a tectonic shift in the Cadogan family's destiny. You see, Elizabeth was not just the daughter of Hans Sloane, a man who served as physician to the British royals and was a cornerstone of the Royal Society. She was a passport to an empire of wealth. Indeed, Sir Hans Sloane's collection of items eventually formed the foundation of the British Museum, the British Library, and the Natural History Museum in London. And his 166 acres of prime Chelsea land were nothing less than a wellspring of future opportunities. For example, a pivotal moment would come in 1777, courtesy of Charles Sloane Cadogan, the first Earl Cadogan. With the kind of audacity reserved for men of his ilk, he gave birth to Hanstown, London's first new town, a revolutionary residential district designed with panache. Situated on the fringe of Chelsea, it was more than just property, it was a tantalizing hint of the urban sprawl that would soon sweep the area. Named after Hans Sloane himself, it epitomized the family's calculated ambition and keen sense of urban planning. See, by the 1800s, the West London scenery was ripe for transformation. Chelsea and Belgravia turned into magnets of sophistication, drawing in an eclectic blend of individuals, from writers wielding quills like sabres to industrialists crafting empires. The metamorphosis found its zenith in the 1830s and 1840s, catalyzed by particular infrastructure milestones. In 1836, the debut of the London and Southampton Railway added a touch of expedience, transforming the districts into commuter heavens overnight. A less glamorous but crucial endeavour saw Chelsea and Belgravia equipped with state-of-the-art sewage systems by the 1850s. A civil engineering marvel of its day, it elevated the public health standards, rendering the locales all the more alluring. The capital and wealth allocation flowed with a velocity that could rival the River Thames, manifesting in squares and houses of sheer opulence. George Bersavi's Belgrave Square in 1826 was such an estate, swiftly becoming London's piece de resistance of residential grandeur. Eaton Square, completed in 1855, wasn't far behind. It added another layer of prestige to Belgravia, swiftly becoming an aristocratic playground frequented by the likes of diplomats and the moneyed elite. Then, as if punctuating an already eloquent sentence, the 1880s saw the fifth Earl Cadogan bring forth Pont Street Dutch, an architectural style redolent of flair and grandiosity. It coloured Chelsea and Belgravia with an aesthetic as distinctive as a Cadogan family crest. But stagnation is not a term found in the Cadogan lexicon, and their emerald fingerprints can also be found on West London's landscape and horticulture. Particularly in Belgravia, the family's influence is evident in the hallowed grounds of Cadogan Place Gardens, a green oasis, a veritable Eden, nestled amidst the stony opulence of its environs. Laid out meticulously, these gardens serve not merely as recreational spaces, but as lush havens for urban fauna. It's more than just a garden, it's a manifestation of this family's ethos of excellence, mirrored by the adjacent, equally exquisite townhouses. Whether offering spots for leisure, areas for flora and fauna to thrive, or even allotments that encouraged local cultivation, these spaces became an integral part of the city's evolving lifestyle, a lifestyle that the Cadogans were pivotal in defining. Now, in the early 20th century, the Cadogan found themselves at a historical intersection. Chelsea was undergoing a metamorphosis, morphing from a semi-rural idyll into a vibrant cosmopolitan district. This was a period of electric change. Artisans and bohemians flooded the borough, painting its streets with hues of creativity. Outside the immediate precincts of Hans Town, the Cadogan touch was omnipresent. Draycott Place began to resemble a stage set for elegance, boasting row houses and small mansions adorned in high white stuccoed facades and red brick exteriors. Cadogan Terrace emerged as an idyllic enclave, a suburban dream encapsulated within London's pulsing heart, complete with lush gardens nestled between residential jewels. King's Road, once a nondescript avenue, burgeoned into a hub of commercial allure, especially after the Second World War. It morphed into a byword for chic, home to boutiques, cafes, and the vibrant spirit of the swinging 60s. In Belgravia, Cadogan Place evolved into a magnet for opulence, a display of architectural prowess featuring neo-Georgian and Victorian styles. Sloane Square, once a simple square, transformed into a veritable epicenter of commerce and culture, replete with department stores and venues like the Royal Court Theatre. The adjacent streets to the east of Sloane Street danced to a similar tune, becoming boulevards of style and status, graced by art galleries and international embassies. It was as if the Cadogans were artists and their real estate holdings a canvas, upon which they painted a vivid portrait of what West London could be, more than just residential spaces, but crucibles of culture, commerce, and high society. Each building, each garden, and each commercial venture stood as a marker of their far-reaching influence. And these days the name Cadogan is synonymous with affluence and real estate might. The reigning patriarch, Edward Cadogan, 9th Earl Cadogan, inherited his title in the year 2023. This transition of nobility came on the heels of his father, Charles Cadogan's departure from the earthly stage. The year was 1966 when Edward made his debut in the world, born to Charles and the graceful Lady Philippa Wallop. Before immersing himself in the family's vast holdings, Edward donned the garb of a military man, an officer of the Royal Air Force, where his performance was nothing short of stellar. Upon switching from fatigues to boardroom suits in 2012, Edward assumed the chairmanship of the Cadogan Group. This monolithic entity reigned over a colossal 90 acres of London's choicest real estate, a portfolio boasting a breathtaking valuation of £5.1 billion, or roughly $6.4 billion, as of 2022. And the younger generation of the Cadogans is far from mundane either. Among them is Edward's daughter, also named Philippa, an interior designer and a viral socialite of significant repute in both media and artistic domains. In 2021, Philippa announced her engagement to fellow aristocratic heir Christian von Kelsen, also born in the year 1992. Specifically, Christian is the offspring of Mr. Hans von Chelsing and his wife, Virginia Anne Mackenzie, herself a descendant of the Mackenzie baronets, a lineage with roots that date back to the 17th century, dovetailing perfectly with Philippa's own esteemed heritage. And Christian himself has a genealogy that could rival a history book. He comes from a line that includes the Rawlinson, Kirkpatrick and Seymour baronets, each a name etched into the annals of British nobility. Further amplifying the historical weight, he counts among his ancestors the Dukes of Somerset, a line that can trace its grandeur back to the Plantagenet era. Yet, as the spotlight beams on Philippa, it's crucial not to overlook another intriguing figure, Charles William Llewellyn Cadogan, born on the 2nd of October 1998. For the teenage Charles, Philippa's younger brother, growing up as a Generation Z aristocrat must be nothing short of a riveting juxtaposition of eras. Imagine, if you will, the curious blend of 21st century sensibilities with a heritage that dates back centuries. While other young adults might immerse themselves in the digital age, dabbling in social media and online gaming, Charles must often straddle a world where ancient tapestries share room space with cutting-edge technology. Indeed, Charles briefly grazed media headlines in 2018 thanks to a spirited jaunt that found him driving his grey BMW at a blistering 71 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. The young Cadogan explained that the anticipation of nearing the family's sprawling 2,800-acre Scottish estate, Snago Estate, caused him to momentarily disregard the law. The incident led to a £300 fine and the imposition of 4 points on his driving licence. Although the exact figure of Charles's current personal net worth remains veiled in discretion, there's no questioning the immense fortune to which he is heir. This is a sum that is calculated not merely in billions of pounds, approximately 7 billion to be more precise, but in the immeasurable currency of social prestige and historic stature. Thus, from their humble origins in Wales to their eventual settlement in Ireland and further afield to Albion, the saga of the Cadogan Earls unfurls like a chronicle, tinged with both valour and shrewd manoeuvring. Their history winds its way through the turbulent English Civil War, a period where loyalties were tested and fates sealed. The family emerged not broken but tempered, gaining both military distinction and social prominence. Fast forward to more recent times, and one finds the Cadogans not as mere survivors, but as potentates of an empire, landowners in the very epicenter of London's opulence. Sibling rivalries amongst brothers have always captivated the general public with the kind of drama and intrigue usually reserved for Shakespearean plays. Consider the legendary 12th century feud between King Henry II's sons, Richard the Lionheart and King John, a brotherly feud that held the very English throne in the balance. Or the Berkeley brothers, those famed British business moguls whose corporate clashes and courtroom skirmishes could easily fuel a modern-day soap opera. To even in more recent years, where we all remember Oasis's Gallagher brothers flipping a sibling rivalry into a public spectacle, all the while turning their squabbles as iconic as their actual songs. But what happens when this classic tale of sibling rivalry isn't fought between brothers themselves, but a heated competition over billions between two entirely different families? Indeed, that is precisely the spectacle unfolding in 21st century London, as our capital's real estate crown has become the ultimate spoils in a prize fight between two sets of brothers, the Rueben brothers and the Livingstone brothers. Now in the right corner, donning the gloves of seasoned strategists, stand the Rueben brothers. With a flair for high-profile acquisitions and a portfolio that's a veritable atlas of prime real estate, they're akin to heavyweight champions in the ring of property development. Their moves are calculated and their investments diverse, spanning from luxury retail to opulent hotels. Now, cast your eyes to the left corner, where the Livingstone brothers are gearing up. These maestros of the metropolitan landscape boast a knack for transformative projects, turning underutilized spaces into thriving urban hubs. Their approach, a blend of innovation and intuition, making them formidable contenders in this urban duel. Today, as the bell rings, London watches with bated breath as the city's skyline becomes the arena for this titanic clash. This isn't just a fight for property, it's a battle for legacy, influence, and the right to shape one of the world's most iconic cities. In this episode, we'll give you the final scorecard and let you make your own decision, as we describe. The dueling billionaire brothers who own London's prime real estate. In the high-stakes monopoly game of London real estate, the Rueben brothers, David and Simon, are already the equivalent of owning Park Place, and they're fast on the heels of the Livingstones to snap up the boardwalk spot as well. These tycoons, who rank among the UK's wealthiest families, have turned London's skyline into a veritable Christmas stocking shelf of their assets, with a Santa's gift bag share in the elite enclaves of Mayfair and St James. And for those not in the know, Mayfair and St James are to London what Rodeo Drive is to Beverly Hills, a blend of historical charm and wallet-thinning opulence. Owning property here opens doors to an exclusive network and lifestyle, enhancing the social and business opportunities for the owners. And investing in real estate in Mayfair and St James not only assures a prestigious address, but also offers a resilient value proposition. Now, the Rueben brothers' portfolio is a collection of London's most valuable and sought-after properties, each a unique gem in the city's architectural crown. Consider the Millbank Tower, standing majestically along the Thames River. This skyscraper is a celebrated icon of London's post-war development and modernity, and its prime location and sweeping city views make it an enviable spot for businesses and political offices, symbolising progress and strength in the London skyline. And Oxford Street, with its pulsating energy and endless stream of shoppers and visitors, houses the famous London Primark store, another arrow in the Ruben's real estate quiver. This location is not just a retail space, it's a cultural epicenter where fashion trends from around the world converge. Additionally, Carlton House in SW1 is another highlight, reflecting London's historic charm and elegance. Situated in one of the city's most exclusive areas, it embodies the sophistication and allure that is characteristic of London. But then there's their pièce de résistance, the Piccadilly estate. This collection includes the famed In and Out Club at 94 Piccadilly and the Burlington Arcade, a Grade 2 listed shopping haven sold for a mere £300 million in 2018. 94 Piccadilly, formerly known as Cambridge House, holds a prominent place in the city's architectural and social history. It was once the home of Lord Palmerston, former British Prime Minister, and the In and Out Club, so named for the prominent traffic signs at its entrance, has become synonymous with luxury, exclusivity, and a deep connection to British heritage. Furthermore, in the heart of luxury retail, their 5152 New Bond Street property, home to the Armani flagship store, stands as an icon of their penchant for high-end investments. But their empire isn't confined to these trophy assets. It sprawls across Grosvenor Street, Bruton Street, and others, areas renowned for their blend of commercial might and cultural heritage. Admiralty Arch, part of this collection, further epitomizes their flair for blending historical significance with modern luxury. And while the exact valuation of their London empire is as elusive as the Holy Grail, their estimated net worth of £25 billion in 2023 gives a hint of its magnitude. But to be clear, this wealth isn't just anchored in the UK. It spans the Atlantic, with significant stakes in New York and South Florida. Thus, to describe the Rueben brothers' portfolio merely as impressive would be like calling the Sistine Chapel a nice ceiling job. With that all said, let's dive into a little bit of the personal history of these princes of prime central London. David, born in 1941, and Simon, born in 1944, are the sons of David Sassoon Rueben and Nancy Rueben, and are ethnically part of a Baghdadi Jewish family. Their father's journey from Iraq to Bombay in search of better prospects in the textile industry laid the groundwork for what would become a remarkable business saga, and the plot thickened when the family dynamics shifted, leading to the brothers' relocation to London with their mother in the 1950s. But the change was not without its challenges. The brothers found themselves adapting to a new life in Islington, North London, and navigating the British educational system, with Simon leaving formal education prematurely. And the brothers' foray into the business world was characterized by modest beginnings, David in scrap metals and Simon in the carpet industry. But it was in the property market that they found their true calling, a sector that would later define their business empire. Their strategic foresight was evident early on, as they were among the first Western investors to capitalize on the shift towards capitalism in Russia. Their venture, Trans World Group, rapidly ascended to become a leading force in the global metal industry, commanding a significant portion of Russia's aluminium production. By the turn of the millennium, the Rueben brothers had shifted their focus back to the UK, divesting their Russian interests. Their portfolio expanded to encompass real estate, venture capital, and private equity, with a particular emphasis on the UK property market. Later, a notable chapter in their story unfolded in April 2020 with the proposed acquisition of Newcastle United Football Club. The Rueben brothers, alongside Amanda Staveley's PCP Capital Partners and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, initially faced resistance from the Premier League. However, by October 2021, the Premier League sanctioned the buyout, with the Saudi Public Investment Fund acquiring a majority stake and the Rueben brothers securing a portion of the shares. However, not all their endeavours sailed smoothly. In 2006, Ken Livingstone, then Mayor of London, vociferously criticised the Ruebens' involvement in the Olympic City development, urging them in a controversial statement to try their luck with the Ayatollahs, referencing their history in the Middle East. Despite Livingstone's fiery remarks, an official investigation later dismissed complaints against him, labelling his criticism as robust but reasonable. Through these various ventures and challenges, the Rueben brothers' journey from the streets of Bombay to the forefront of London's property market speaks to their business acumen and adaptability in the ever-evolving world of global investments. However, as previously mentioned, the Ruebens are not the only brotherly barons of prime central London. Their ostensible main competitors of the Livingstone family boast an equally impressive roster of real estate holdings and property investments. Indeed, in the dynamic and ever-evolving world of London real estate, few names shine as brightly as those of Ian and Richard Livingstone. The driving force behind London and regional properties have constructed an impressive real estate kingdom, with their assets in the UK capital and beyond valued at a staggering £5 billion, with each property sparkling with its own unique allure. Take, for instance, Levison's vintage clothing in Shoreditch, a beacon of style in one of London's most avant-garde neighbourhoods. A nod to the cultural zeitgeist of an area celebrated for its eclectic and trend-setting ambience, this property demonstrates the Livingstones' keen eye for snapping up our capital's hotspots aimed towards the youth. Then there's the dazzling array of top-tier hotels. The London Hilton on Park Lane and the Trafalgar St James stand as jewels in the crown of London's hospitality scene. These aren't mere accommodations, they are landmarks in their own right, immersed in the heart of the city's prestige and luxury. The London Hilton, with its commanding views of Hyde Park and proximity to Mayfair, is a symbol of opulence, while the Trafalgar St James resonates with historical significance, nestled near the iconic Trafalgar Square. But the Livingstone's touch extends further. The Radisson Blu at Portman Square exemplifies modern luxury, a shining example of contemporary hospitality. But it is the Livingstones' ownership of the legendary Cliveden House in Berkshire that truly captures the essence of historical grandeur. Cliveden is not merely a hotel, it is a storied icon, steeped in British history and wrapped in the cloak of the nation's aristocracy. The legacy of Cliveden stretches back centuries, its walls echoing the whispers of political intrigue and high society gatherings. From its inception by the second Duke of Buckingham in the 17th century, Cliveden has been a stage for the powerful and the influential. Its opulent rooms and sprawling gardens have hosted royalty, prime ministers, and celebrities, each adding to its illustrious past. And more than just its historical significance, Cliveden's architecture is a visual feast. A blend of Romanesque and Renaissance styles that stands as a symbol of the pinnacle of British craftsmanship. Its gardens, too, are a masterpiece, offering a tranquil escape into nature, meticulously sculpted to perfection. However, the house's influence extends into popular culture as well, having inspired numerous authors and filmmakers. It's been the setting for key moments in history, like the notorious Profumo affair, which rocked the British government in the 1960s. Furthermore, the Livingstone's savvy investment of £165 million in Whitbread, the powerhouse behind Premier Inn, and the acquisition of 47 Holiday Inn Express outlets demonstrate a hawk's eye for mainstream market dominance. This move isn't just about expansion, it's about deepening their influence across different segments of the hospitality industry, from luxury to budget-friendly options. Moreover, their holdings in Atlas hotels and iconic luxury hotels showcase prized assets like Chewton Glen in the New Forest, a retreat that offers an escape into nature's embrace, blending luxury with the tranquility of the English countryside. These establishments are more experiences than simple properties, offering distinct flavours of British elegance and charm. And beyond the hospitality realm, the Livingstones' portfolio encompasses a range of residential properties, painting a picture of their diverse investment strategy. This array includes 55 Baker Street, Elizabeth House, and 10 Bloomsbury Way, among others, cementing their presence across key locations in central London and beyond. But their investment acumen is not limited to bricks and mortar. The Livingstones have ventured into the digital sphere with a significant stake in Evolution Gaming, a Swedish online gambling powerhouse. This foray has proven incredibly lucrative, yielding a phenomenal 5,000% return. Yes, 5,000%, not £5,000, substantially adding to their financial clout. And their combined net worth, as of winter 2023, is on track to hit an awe-inspiring £7 billion. However, despite their tremendous success and influence in the property sector, the Livingstone brothers maintain a remarkably low profile. Often referred to as the most secretive billionaire siblings in London, they exemplify the ethos of silent movers and shakers in the high-stakes world of real estate. However, how did these secret scions of real estate legends first get their start? Let's roll back the clock and find out. Both sons of a dentist in Ealing, London, the Livingstone sons shared not just familial ties, but also an early education at St Paul's School, one of the city's most prestigious private schools. Born in May 1962, Ian Livingstone's journey from the bustling streets of London to the hallowed halls of higher education was marked by academic rigour and precision. A student of City University London, he pursued optometry, emerging in 1984 as a qualified optometrist. His academic achievements set the stage for what would become a flourishing career in the optical retail sector. By 1990, Ian had ascended to the role of chairman and majority shareholder of the Optica Clulo Group. Under his leadership, the group expanded its reach to include 170 optician stores, marking a significant footprint in the industry. And Ian's personal life, too, reflects a blend of intellectual pursuits and familial warmth. He married Natalie, a journalist whose intellect and wit are as sharp as her Cambridge education. Together, they navigate the joys and challenges of raising 3 daughters, Grace, Alice, and Elizabeth, each embarking on her own unique journey. And Richard Livingstone's story, while parallel in its beginnings, takes a different turn. Born in November 1964, as previously mentioned, he shared the same educational roots as his brother at St. Paul's School. His career trajectory, however, led him to the world of property and surveying. Richard honed his skills as a chartered surveyor, a profession demanding a keen eye for detail and precision, skills undoubtedly nurtured during his formative years, and his time at Richard Ellis in the 80s spoke to his growing expertise in the field. But Richard's personal life has seen its share of highs and lows. In 1997, he married Claire Burns, daughter of John Burns of the Derwent London Property Group, a union that brought together 2 families with deep roots in the property sector. However, their paths eventually diverged, leading to their divorce. After their initial jaunts in business, the Livingstone brothers, united by blood and ambition, ventured into property development, marking a significant shift in their professional lives. Their acquisition of the David Clulo Opticians chain in 1992 was just the beginning, before they sold the chain in 2011, signalling a full transition to property development. Interestingly, many of their early projects were underpinned by financial support from Jacob Rothschild's merchant bank, Dawnay Day, a partnership that speaks to the brothers' knack for forging strategic alliances. Therefore, the Shakespearean drama of London real estate between the Rueben and Livingstone brothers is a modern-day epic. The Rueben brothers' journey from modest beginnings to the pinnacle of London's property market is a striking illustration of strategic acumen and entrepreneurial spirit. And, on the other side, the Livingstone brothers, equally ambitious and twice as discreet, have crafted a diverse empire encompassing everything from iconic hotels to innovative commercial spaces. In the dusky corridors of the European elite, a lineage with Germanic ancestry shaped itself to embody the noble legacy of England. Once known as Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, the dynasty shifted as profoundly as the transformation of raw ore into polished gold. Rooted in tradition, their influence spread like gilded branches reaching across European courts. As World War I broke forth, a tempest of anti-German sentiments roared across the British Isles, a storm fueled by mistrust and fear. With a decisive act in 1917, King George V penned the new family name Windsor, and the family, akin to a vintage wine skillfully decanted and allowed to breathe, found themselves seamlessly blending into the very soil and soul of Britain, their former identity left behind like the residue at the bottom of the fine glass. The Windsors flourished, subsequently reflecting English virtues, a family in loyal service to the realm, and emanating an elegance and respect that became as synonymous with our nation as the gentle roll of the Thames through London's heart. In this episode of Old Money Luxury, we embark on a sweeping exploration of the illustrious Windsor dynasty, from their original German heartlands through their shrewd marital alliances and deft political ascendancy to the very heights of British power, to the now profound shift that crowned them the foremost family on Albion, as we describe how the Windsors went from German old money to British royalty. In the looming shadows of an ancient German stronghold in the heart of the European continent, a dynasty was stirring. A lineage that would later become known to the world as the House of Windsor, but started with the seed of the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. The story's roots reach deep, twisted and mysterious, stretching into the darkness of time. Its inception can be traced to the 10th century nobleman, Theodoric, dwelling in northwestern Germany's Saxony Duchy. The mystery of his true heritage, whether connected to Emperor Charlemagne or the Counts of the Harz Mountains, leaves questions lingering like a fog-shrouded landscape. As time rambled on, Theodoric's descendants began to rise in stature within the Eastern March, a frontier region absorbed into the Holy Roman Empire. With lands acquired and a castle named Wettin, meaning welcome in Swabian and later Germanized to Wettin, they became known as the House of Wettin. By 1030, the Eastern March was divided, and the Wettins acquired one portion, Lusatia. The century's end saw them wield significant influence over Meissen and the south. Throughout the Middle Ages, their dominions grew, marked by the discovery of silver in 1116 and gaining control over Thuringia. They were now among the privileged few who could elect emperors. But challenges were on the horizon. The rising Hohenzollerns to the north, rulers of Brandenburg and later kings of Prussia, overshadowed them. After Frederick II's death in 1464, the empire's surviving sons, Ernest and Albert, divided the territories. The dynasty's fabric was thus woven, interlaced with triumph and tribulation, conquests and challenges. Within this story's mosaic, two lines emerged, the Ernestine and Albertine branches. The Ernestine, initially more powerful, led to the Windsor lineage, but the equilibrium of power was precarious, and the Protestant Reformation soon shifted the balance. You see, in Wittenberg the Ernestines governed, founding a prestigious university. Here, Martin Luther found refuge, and by 1526, Lutheranism became distinct. A military alliance was formed, but war with Emperor Charles V led to defeat for the Ernestines in 1547. In contrast, the Albertine line flourished, ruling as electors and later kings of Saxony. Meanwhile, the Ernestines divided into ever smaller duchies, fragmented yet pulsing with potential. Out of this complexity, the 19th century dynasty emerged. Additionally, a significant rearrangement occurred in 1826, with Duke Ernest of Saxe-Coburg-Saalfeld taking Gotha, thus giving birth to Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. But as the 18th century approached, a murmur of change was in the air. The pages of the next regal chapter were about to be turned, and the tale of the future Windsors was just beginning. Now, the actual Duchy of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha was unimposing, smaller than Luxembourg, with a mid-19th century population of around 150,000. Yet the Coburgs had their eyes on grander horizons and would soon weave their lineage into almost every royal family on the continent. A mere few years after the house's inception, they achieved a startling milestone. A Coburg became King of Belgium. As the decades rolled by and their discriminating stratagems began to bear political fruit, their influence expanded across the lands of Portugal, Bulgaria, and the mighty British Empire. The story of this extraordinary rise begins with the illustrious legacy of Prince Josias, great-uncle to Ernest. An Austrian field marshal, Josias was celebrated for his triumphant campaigns against the Ottoman Empire and revolutionary France. His close association with Empress Catherine the Great of Russia provided a golden opportunity for the Coburgs to ascend. In the year 1795, Catherine sought a bride for her grandson, Constantine. Her eyes turned to the Coburg sisters, inviting three of them to Russia. The youngest, Julian, eventually married Constantine in 1796, despite his reluctance. This union, although later soured by Constantine's harsh behavior, brought invaluable prestige to the duchy. Simultaneously, young Leopold, Julian's 6-year-old brother, began to make his mark in Russian nobility. He eventually emerged as a warrior, distinguishing himself in battles against Napoleon and victoriously entering Paris in 1814. Leopold's star was rising. By age 23, he found himself in Britain, introduced to Princess Charlotte, the heir apparent. Despite his self-doubts, fate smiled upon him. Charlotte's intended marriage crumbled, and she turned to Leopold, a man of sense and good temperament. They married in 1816, deeply in love, and the Coburgs stood on the threshold of inheriting the British throne. However, destiny is rarely a straight path. The Coburgs meticulously wove their influence through European royalty, achieving alliances, battling adversaries, and nurturing love. They were the masters of a game that reached far beyond their humble duchy. However, a heartbreaking twist arrived on November 5, 1817. The tragic death of Princess Charlotte during childbirth marked a turning point in the British royal family's succession. The void in Leopold's life led to urgent actions by the British princes to find legitimate heirs. It was Prince Edward who married Leopold's sister Victoria, giving birth to the future Queen Victoria. With this pivotal moment, the dynasty of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha shifted course once again. A small, seemingly insignificant principality had grown to shape the continent's history, where love and political savvy created a lasting impact. However, Leopold's destiny would not be confined to personal tragedy. Instead, it was soon intertwined with the rise of a new royal dynasty. In 1830, the newly independent nation of Belgium offered Leopold the crown, with Britain's approval. Becoming Belgium's first king, Leopold's political acumen played a vital role in the family's rise to prominence. His strategic vision led to the union of his nephew, Prince Albert, with Queen Victoria of Britain, a match he had long hoped to make. Albert's new role as prince consort would have profound implications. Through his children with Queen Victoria, the British crown would eventually pass to the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and Leopold's influence extended even further. He forged alliances with French and Austrian royal families, and even managed to place a Coburg on the Portuguese throne through his nephew Ferdinand's marriage to Queen Maria II. The family's influence continued to grow, spreading even to Bulgaria. In 1901, upon Queen Victoria's death, her eldest son Edward assumed the throne, ushering in the Edwardian era, a time marked by opulence and optimism that briefly captured the spirit of the British Empire. Following King Edward's reign, his son George V ascended to the throne in 1910, steering the monarchy through the turbulent waters of World War I, an epoch that challenged the very foundations of European royalty. Indeed, in 1917, King George V made a decision that would forever change the family's destiny. He rechristened the dynasty as the House of Windsor. This new identity marked a departure from the family's German lineage, with the British royals renouncing all German titles, including that of George V's cousin, Ludwig von Battenberg. The name change was met with wry amusement by Kaiser Wilhelm II, the last German emperor and King George V's cousin. But the Great War was not without its tragedies for the Windsors. The execution of Russian Tsar Nicholas II, also a cousin of King George V, sent ripples through the family and marked a turning point in European relations. Following the war, the abdication of Kaiser Wilhelm II further severed ties between the House of Windsor and the German monarchy, reshaping the European royal landscape. Thus, the Windsors sought to redefine themselves in the post-war era, distancing from their German roots. However, their descendants still married into other European royal courts, weaving the British and German families ever closer together. Yet in 1936, a new crisis threatened to unravel the very fabric of the monarchy. Edward VIII's abdication, prompted by his intention to marry American divorcee Wallis Simpson, sent shockwaves throughout Britain and beyond. The vehement disapproval of this decision by government officials, the public, and the Church of England underscored the monarchy's fragile balance between tradition and personal desire, laying bare the complexities of a dynasty in constant evolution. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin played a central role in this drama, offering Edward an ultimatum: you can either have the throne or Wallis Simpson. Edward's choice to abdicate marked not only his demotion to the Duke of Windsor, but also the stripping of His Royal Highness status, further adding fuel to the flames of this turbulent time for the Windsor dynasty. Shortly after abdication, this Duke of Windsor, now the former King Edward VIII, was known to have collaborated with the Nazis during the war. In fact, in 1937, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor actually visited Nazi Germany, causing widespread controversy and raising suspicions about their intentions, even as members of the royal family. Thus, indeed, the infamous abdication crisis exposed the fragility of the monarchy and the potential for personal decisions to have seismic repercussions. It served as a somber reminder of the institution's vulnerability, yet also as a catalyst for change. King George VI, ascending to the throne after his brother's departure, set about diligently restoring connections with European houses, working to stabilize the House of Windsor's standing. However, though the shadow of the abdication crisis would loom large, it would not define the House of Windsor's future. As George VI worked to mend the past, little did he know that the dawn of a new chapter was on the horizon, a chapter that would see the rise of a new monarch, one who would lead the Windsors to perhaps their most shining triumph. The era of Elizabeth II was about to begin. The year 1952 marked a turning point for the House of Windsor with the death of King George VI. Britain grieved the loss of a beloved monarch, who had been instrumental in rebuilding the nation after the devastation of war. However, a historic transition was about to unfold. In 1953, Elizabeth II was crowned Queen in a grand coronation ceremony, attended by international dignitaries. Her reign heralded a new epoch, and she quickly moved to modernize the monarchy to keep pace with the rapidly evolving world. With her coronation as the first to be televised, she bridged the gap between the royal family and the public. Furthermore, during these post-war years, the House of Windsor played a vital role in re-establishing connections with European royal houses. The newly minted Queen Elizabeth II, having familial ties with most European monarchs, nurtured strong relationships through visits, collaborations, and diplomatic engagements. These connections, rooted in shared history, were instrumental in fostering cooperation among European monarchies and offering mutual support during a time where empires had just been shattered and monarchies were beginning to be seen as anachronistic and overly hierarchical. Indeed, the Windsors' influence reached one of its pinnacles with the international media frenzy surrounding the 1981 engagement and wedding of Charles, Prince of Wales, to Lady Diana Spencer. With European royals and dignitaries in attendance, the event significantly helped solidify the Windsors' public image in the modern age. Simultaneously, throughout this period, the Windsors' continued ties with the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha remained significant. These connections were seen in private gatherings, shared interests, and joint attendance at events, such as the 1960 wedding of Princess Alexandra of Kent. This alliance was further exemplified in 1972, when both families, in a humble and regal fashion, mourned the Duke of Windsor's death, despite his antics being perhaps the closest their clan had ever come to losing power. Thus, by engaging in shared cultural heritage, ceremonies, and celebrations, the Windsors honored their historical connections through traditions and collaborative public works. Their involvement in various causes, such as the establishment of the Royal Foundation, further illustrated their commitment to their role in society. The decades that followed the crowning of Elizabeth II marked a time of growth, adaptation, and strengthening for the House of Windsor. But as the millennium drew to a close, the dawn of the 21st century would draw some of the most significant and unexpected challenges they had ever faced. The stage was set, and the world waited in anticipation as the Windsors prepared to enter uncharted territories, where trials and triumphs awaited them. The 1990s marked a transformative period in the United Kingdom, often referred to as Cool Britannia. This cultural renaissance coincided with the rise of Tony Blair's new Labour government and brought with it a fresh wave of optimism and perceived modernity. The House of Windsor, ever adaptive, embraced these changes, reflecting the new spirit of the time. Additionally, this era witnessed significant inward migration from the new Commonwealth, leading to a more diverse and multicultural Britain. The Windsors attempted to successfully navigate this shift, engaging with various communities and openly celebrating the demographic diversity that emerged within the country. However, this decade brought challenges as well. For example, the advent of the 24-hour news cycle profoundly impacted the royal family, especially in the wake of Princess Diana's tragic death in 1997. The intense media scrutiny that followed, focusing on her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, forced the Windsors to adapt to an unrelenting public gaze. Furthermore, more recently, the House of Windsor has grappled with a disconcerting scandal involving Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein starting in the late 1990s, initiated through Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of late controversial British newspaper magnate Robert Maxwell. The connection, which persisted for more than a decade, led to severe censure as Epstein was a convicted offender of some of the most horrible crimes known to humanity. Prince Andrew's withdrawal from his role as a trade envoy in 2011 did little to quell the turmoil, and the controversy escalated dramatically in 2019 with Virginia Giuffre's accusations of the worst kinds of assault against the prince. Subsequently, Prince Andrew attempted to repair his image with a now infamous interview, which in fact exponentially increased the public's fury due to the incredibly odd nature of Prince Andrew's behavior during the conversation, thus forcing the royal family to steer through a highly public and thorny scandal from which many questions still arise. Simultaneously, the union of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, at first a significant and joyous occasion throughout the Commonwealth, also quickly became a focal point of contention and debate. The couple's decision to step back from royal obligations and seek financial autonomy in the United States, officially implemented on March 31, 2020, sparked impassioned public discourse. These conversations extended beyond their individual choices, uncomfortably veering towards broader issues of race and identity in the Windsors' United Kingdom, and reflecting complex dynamics within both the royal family and the nation itself. Now, with the recent passing of Queen Elizabeth II, the world has experienced profound global ramifications. As the longest reigning British monarch, her death marked the end of an era and has heralded a new chapter for the Windsor family, ushering in a period of reflection, transition, and renewal. Happily, in the shadow of substantial concerns and challenges, the bright image of Prince William, Kate Middleton and their children, including Prince George, the presumptive future king, emerges as a beacon of hope. Their public engagements, philanthropic endeavours, and graceful bearing instill optimism and goodwill, crafting a vision of promise for the future of the House of Windsor. Thus, from their German pastoral awakenings to the testy cultural waters of modern Albion, from formidable challenges to triumphant milestones, the royal family's tale is etched into the very soul of our nation. Their saga both shapes and reflects national life, highlighting an unwavering resilience that ensures their commanding presence within Britain's heart, now and as they stride gracefully into the future as a living embodiment of our old adage, keep calm and carry on. In the glittering and dramatic panorama of British high society, one family's legacy radiates with extraordinary influence, charm, and controversy. The Spencer-Churchills, a name that's become an emblem of power, prestige, and paradox, have become far more than just aristocrats. They've etched their name indelibly into the stones of history, with the expected next King of England himself being of partial Spencer-Churchill stock. Boasting an unparalleled lineage, their story is a rollercoaster of triumphs, trials, and world-shaping events. It's no ordinary tale of nobility, it's a spectacular saga with characters as legendary as Winston Churchill, Britain's invincible wartime hero, and as beloved as Princess Diana, the people's princess who took the world by storm. Their journey from sheep herding to powerful earls to the throne room of British monarchy is filled with startling twists and turns, heart-stopping moments of sheer drama, and an ever-radiating legacy that has captivated the world. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, join us as we unveil the exhilarating tale of England's most famous aristocrats, the Spencer-Churchill family. In the pastoral world of 15th century England, amidst the bleating of sheep and the hard-earned sweat of shepherds, emerged a lineage that would shape the course of British high society for centuries to come. This was the Spencer lineage, and at its foundation stood a simple, hard-working sheep farmer, Henry Spencer. Close on Henry's heels was his relative, John Spencer, a practical man who possessed both a head for business and a heart for his flock. By 1469, John had earned a position of responsibility, a trustee in Warwickshire. He further spread his influence by becoming a tenant at Althrup in Northamptonshire in 1486. Enter the stage Sir John Spencer, John's ambitious and industrious nephew. With a keen sense for opportunity, Sir John Spencer first filled his coffers through the lucrative business of livestock trading and commodity exchange. His fortunes grew and his vision expanded, ultimately enabling him to acquire the lands of Wormleighton and Althrup. Thus the Spencer family set their foot on the ladder of wealth and prestige, an ascent that was only to continue. The era was marked by the rich tapestry of the Middle Ages, where sheep held not only practical but also economic importance. More than their meat, it was their wool that was sought after, fueling a booming textile industry. Amidst this demand, the Spencers, with their abundant flocks, found themselves in a position of power. Yet Sir John Spencer was not one to rest on the laurels of just one successful industry. He foresaw the benefits of diversifying, and with strategic brilliance, leveraged his profits to acquire significant expanses of real estate. In 1511, he astutely added the villages of Little Brington and Great Brington, along with the parish church of St. Mary the Virgin, to his estates. Althrup became the Spencers' sanctuary, a home for 19 generations that followed. You see, in the grand scheme of 16th century England, wealth was more than just a cushion of comfort. It was a gilded ticket to social prestige and political influence. For Sir John Spencer, this wealth opened doors previously unimaginable. In 1519, he was knighted by none other than King Henry VIII himself. His death 3 years later saw him buried with honour in the family chapel at Great Brington. As the centuries turned, the Spencer name echoed powerfully through the corridors of the Parliament. Sir Robert Spencer, the grandson of Sir John, stepped into his forefather's shoes, representing Brackley with distinction. Knighted and granted a barony, he was thought to be England's richest man under King James I. The Spencers' rise stirred envy among the old guard, particularly the established Howards. In a heated debate in the House of Peers, Lord Spencer was criticised for his family's humble beginnings. Yet, with an unyielding spirit, Lord Spencer retorted with a sharp jibe about treason, insinuating that humble beginnings could indeed lead to greatness. As the tapestry of the Spencer saga continued to unfurl, their influence and power surged, crystallising in their rise to becoming the Dukes of Marlborough and Earls Spencer. These titles, steeped in history and prestige, were a glittering testimony to the Spencers' remarkable journey from sheep pastures to the pinnacle of British aristocracy. Amidst this swirling narrative of power and prestige, a particularly vibrant thread stands out: the indomitable Sarah Churchill. Her life, immortalised in the recent silver screen epic, The Favourite, adds a touch of fiery intrigue to the Spencer history. Sarah, born a Churchill, was the wife of John Churchill, the first Duke of Marlborough. In 1817, a significant development would bring the Spencers and Churchills closer together, leading to the confluence of their surnames. George Spencer, then the 5th Duke of Marlborough, decided to assume the additional surname of Churchill in honour of his illustrious ancestor John Churchill. This decision was in part to preserve the name itself, which risked extinction with the lack of male heirs, but also to stake a claim on the legacy and prestige attached to the name of Churchill. The legal process of name change involved a royal licence, but once completed, the Spencers henceforth became known as the Spencer-Churchills, intertwining these two powerful families in the annals of British nobility. This union underscored the Spencers' dominance and further elevated their standing, adding another thrilling chapter to their remarkable saga. The narrative of British history would be incomplete without mentioning one of its most enduring figures, Sir Winston Churchill. Born on November 30th, 1874, Winston Leonard Spencer-Churchill was a direct descendant of the Duke of Marlborough. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a charismatic politician, and his mother, Jenny Jerome, was an American heiress. Winston's early life as a Spencer-Churchill shaped him into a man of indomitable spirit, resilience, and remarkable intellect. As a young man in his 20s and 30s, Churchill's life was marked by tremendous highs and devastating lows. He had a somewhat tumultuous military career, served as a war correspondent, and began his political journey as a Liberal before defecting to the Conservative Party. He weathered failures and rejections, most notably the Dardanelles disaster during World War I, which nearly spelled the end of his political career. Despite the trials, his indefatigable spirit saw him bounce back each time, affirming the Spencer-Churchill mettle. At the zenith of his career, during the harrowing days of World War II, Churchill's leadership shone the brightest. As Prime Minister, he steered Britain with his inspirational speeches and unbending will, refusing to capitulate to the forces of Nazi Germany. His family life, marked by a stable marriage to Clementine Hosier and fatherhood to 5 children, provided a much-needed counterbalance to his demanding political life. Clementine especially served as a pillar of support, influencing Churchill's decisions and helping him navigate the tumultuous waters of politics and war. Churchill's impact on British society was profound and lasting. His unwavering resolve during World War II bolstered the spirits of a beleaguered nation. His stirring speeches roused the British people to fight and persevere, instilling in them a sense of hope, courage, and national pride. Churchill was not just a statesman, but a prolific writer whose works earned him the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. He also played a significant role in shaping post-war international relations, particularly through his Iron Curtain speech, which arguably marked the onset of the Cold War. The legacy of the Spencer-Churchills did not end with Winston. As the pages of history turned, another figure would emerge from this noble lineage, captivating the world with her charm, compassion, and tragic story. This figure was none other than Lady Diana Spencer, who would become the People's Princess, forever embedding the Spencer-Churchill name in the hearts of the British people and the world. Born into the noble Spencer family on July 1, 1961, Lady Diana Frances Spencer, affectionately known as Princess Diana, emerged from the tranquil setting of her family's estate in Sandringham, Norfolk, a harbinger of things to come, as Sandringham is one of the ruling Windsor family's favourite retreats. Her early life and upbringing were steeped in the traditions of the British aristocracy, which laid the foundation for her future role as a royal. One of the more intriguing aspects of Diana's lineage is its intertwining with numerous notable historical figures. Astonishingly, Diana could count the first President of the United States, George Washington, as her eighth cousin, 5 times removed. Moreover, Diana even shared an unexpected familial connection with Audrey Hepburn, the iconic Hollywood actress. The two were distant cousins, connected through Dutch nobility. The values that Diana grew up with, the education she received, and the experiences she had as a child and young woman played an instrumental role in moulding her into the people's princess. She was educated in England and Switzerland, where she developed an interest in music, dance, and social service. Her mother, Frances Shand Kidd, instilled in Diana a strong sense of empathy and a commitment to charity, which would later become defining features of her public life. While her lineage and upbringing were undeniably influential, it was her fateful meeting with Prince Charles, the heir apparent to the British throne, that would propel Diana Spencer from the aristocratic circles into the global spotlight. The journey from Lady Diana Spencer to Princess Diana was about to begin, forever altering the course of her life and leaving an indelible mark on the history of the British monarchy. Lady Diana Spencer's relationship with Prince Charles was a tale of whirlwind romance, marred by subsequent turmoil. Their courtship began in 1980, when Diana was just 19, and Charles, the Prince of Wales, was 32. Despite their age difference and contrasting personalities, the couple got engaged in February 1981. Their wedding, on July 29, 1981, was a spectacle that caught the imagination of an estimated 750 million people across the globe. The awe-inspiring ceremony at St. Paul's Cathedral, suffused with grandeur, wasn't merely the epitome of a fairy tale wedding. It signified a monumental union that connected the distinguished aristocratic lineage of the Spencer-Churchills with the regal House of Windsor. However, soon the strain between nobility and royalty became apparent despite Diana's noble heritage. Her lineage, though noble and aristocratic, was occasionally belittled in the context of the royal household. Conforming to the rigid protocols and unyielding traditions of the royal family, Diana often found herself under pressure to meet royal standards, despite her blue-blooded ancestry. The Spencer-Churchill family, following Diana's marriage, were thrust into the international spotlight, their every move subject to public scrutiny. This newfound fame, an offshoot of their connection to the royal family, was unlike anything the family had encountered. Yet they maintained their distinct identity and aristocratic standing, continuing to influence British society, successfully straddling their traditional status and their recent royal connection. The tragic demise of Diana in 1997 sent shockwaves through the Spencer-Churchill family and the world. Yet, they demonstrated remarkable resilience amidst the heartbreak. Charles, the 9th Earl Spencer and Diana's younger brother, emerged as a stalwart pillar of support. His poignant eulogy at her funeral underscored the enduring strength and dignity of the Spencer-Churchill lineage. As such, the story of the Spencer-Churchill family continued to bring to life the complex interplay of British aristocracy and royalty. It's a tale that weaves together history, influence, and resilience, a saga that continues to fascinate, offering a rich tapestry of the enduring allure of the British upper echelons. However, as the story of any family saga unfolds, it becomes apparent that aristocrats, like all others, are not immune to human frailty or controversy. The Spencer-Churchill dynasty is no exception. At the forefront is James Spencer-Churchill, the 12th Duke of Marlborough. Throughout much of his life, he was no stranger to scandal, his conduct straying far from the traditional stoicism of the aristocracy. His encounters with the law ranged from a month-long prison sentence for forging prescriptions in 1995 to another 6 months in jail for dangerous driving and criminal damage in 2007. In 2013, he faced accusations of spewing racial abuse toward a Sikh cab driver. His involvement in the BBC television documentary, Famous, Rich and Homeless, only added fuel to the fire, his refusal to fully participate in the experience earning public censure. Yet, despite these tumultuous episodes, he reportedly managed a remarkable turnaround, reconciling with his father, who once called him the black sheep of the family. Like many members in the Spencer-Churchill lineage, Jamie Blandford, as he's commonly called, also connects the old world of British aristocracy with the affluent American Vanderbilt lineage, through his great-grandmother, Consuelo Vanderbilt. Now, the heir apparent, George Spencer-Churchill, Marquis of Blandford, is heavily involved in the aristocratic world of polo and has served as a model and brand ambassador for the La Martina brand of polo clothes and accessories since 2015. His sporting interests extend beyond the polo field, as demonstrated by his rowing across the Atlantic Ocean in 35 days, raising over £850,000 for Starlight Children's charity in the process. In keeping with tradition, Lord Blandford married Camilla Elizabeth Antonia Thorpe, a fellow aristocrat and descendant of the Tempest baronets of Tong, Yorkshire, further solidifying the family's aristocratic ties. Alternatively to some of the more salacious behaviours of the patriarchs of the Spencer-Churchill clan in the recent decades, the Spencer-Churchill women have carved out laudable careers. Lady Mary Soames, the youngest daughter of Sir Winston Churchill, and his wife Clementine, was a dynamic figure whose contributions to British society extended well beyond her role as the daughter of one of the country's most revered prime ministers. Born in September 1922, she was a beacon of resilience and strength, embodying the same spirit that defined her father's leadership during World War II. During her lifetime, she made significant strides in both public service and literature. She served with the Auxiliary Territorial Service during the Second World War, a reflection of her dedication to her country in a period of immense upheaval. Moreover, Lady Soames was an acclaimed author, using her unique insights into British history and her personal experiences as a member of the Churchill family to write several books. Her works include a biography of her mother, Clementine Churchill, and a compilation of her parents' letters and correspondence, providing a valuable and intimate perspective on her family's remarkable history. Known for her grace, intellect, and sense of duty, Lady Soames was recognised with numerous accolades. She was made a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire for her public service, particularly for her work with the Royal National Theatre Board and the Churchill Houses Trust. Her death in 2014 marked the end of an era, as she was the last surviving child of Sir Winston and Lady Churchill. Henrietta Spencer-Churchill, the eldest daughter of the 11th Duke of Marlborough, is a prominent figure in the world of interior design. Embracing her family's rich history and artistic heritage, she has leveraged her intuitive sense of style and keen eye for detail to establish two highly successful design companies, Woodstock Designs and Spencer-Churchill Designs. Henrietta's work isn't confined to the British Isles. She has undertaken projects worldwide, spanning from the United States to Russia, showcasing her versatility and adaptability to different cultural aesthetics. Moreover, Henrietta has shared her design expertise and insights into the history of Blenheim Palace, the ancestral home of the Spencer-Churchills, through numerous publications. Arabella Spencer-Churchill, a granddaughter of Sir Winston Churchill, also made a significant impact in her own distinct way. As a co-founder of the Glastonbury Festival, one of the world's largest and most famous music and arts festivals, she played a pivotal role in shaping the UK's contemporary cultural scene. Moreover, she harnessed her influence to do good, establishing numerous charities including the Children's World Charity. This organisation provides educational and social opportunities for children, particularly those with special needs in the UK and overseas. Despite her untimely death in 2007, Arabella's legacy of philanthropy and cultural contribution endures. Thus, the narrative of the Spencer-Churchills is a riveting blend of controversy and commendation, displaying a spectrum that ranges from misdemeanours to merit. This saga reflects their unwavering resilience amidst a diverse array of trials and tribulations. They continue to stand as an emblem of the intricate complexities and fascinating contradictions that define those born into the noble lineage of the aristocracy. In the world of old money, that is, wealth passed down through multiple generations in a family, there can be a lot of superlatives attached to this enigmatic sect of human society. Old money families are the most powerful, the most discreet, the hardest to get into. And yet, even for members of the old money class around the world, there is one family that seemingly towers above them all. The ones that make the powerful look powerless, the ones who make billionaires look like baby boys, and the ones that live more like kings than actual kings. Indeed, one name in modern history reigns above all when we think of old money, and that is, quite naturally, the name of Rothschild. Now, sure, you've seen a ton of videos and documentaries about this family. You've been told the financial details, you've learned about the political power plays, and of course you've heard the theories about their global networks. But have you ever heard the full story, from the very first member of the family up until today, in a neutral, unbiased format? Have you ever been told about the step-by-step growth of this one-of-a-kind dynasty without any agenda on either side, leaving the interpretation of their influence up for you to decide on your own? In today's episode, we'll allow you to do just that, telling the good, the bad, and the luxury of the entire saga as we describe how the Rothschilds went from new money to old money. In the raw heart of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto emerged an unlikely hero on the 23rd of February, 1744. Named Meyer Amschel Rothschild, his birthplace was one of Germany's earliest and most restrictive ghettos, existing in the teeming underbelly of the Holy Roman Empire from 1462 until 1811. Judengasse, or Jews' Lane, was a labyrinth of squalor, a congested and unhygienic curve of cobblestones, stretching a mere 10 to 12 feet across. Sprawling from the Bornheimer Gate in the north to the Jewish cemetery in the south, the district would lock its 3,000 inhabitants within its unyielding clasp daily. Sundays, Christian holidays, and the cloak of night transformed this ghetto into an inescapable fortress, its occupants forbidden from entering public gardens or attending coffee shops. You see, this was a world without freedoms. Ownership of land, affiliation with guilds, and certain professions were forbidden fruits to this community. You see, the sheer density of life in Judengasse was beyond comprehension. Several families huddled together in single apartments, a concentration of humanity that the rest of Frankfurt could scarcely fathom. Amidst this harsh reality, Meyer Amschel was born to Amschel Moses Rothschild and his wife, Schonsche Rothschild. His father, a money changer and silk trader, counted Prince William of Hesse among his clientele. Despite this royal connection, Amschel Moses was far from wealthy, and the family lived in crowded conditions, sharing their dwelling with an extended family of up to 30 members. But the hand of fate can be both cruel and kind. When Meyer Amschel lost both his parents to an epidemic in 1755 and 1756, he found himself under the mentorship of Wolf Jacob Oppenheim in Hanover. This fortuitous turn of events initiated Meyer Amschel into the intricate web of business and the exclusive world of court agents. Adept in dealing with rare coins and medals, Rothschild returned to Frankfurt in 1764. His reputation preceded him, and his clientele swiftly expanded. His rise to prominence was then accelerated by a lucrative deal with the hereditary prince of Hesse Castle. His marriage in 1770 to the daughter of a court agent was another feather in his cap, bringing with it a hefty dowry and a network of influential connections. He was fast becoming Frankfurt's eminent dealer in coins, medals, and antiques. Despite being victim to a substantial embezzlement by an unprincipled employee, his fortune was so significant that he still reigned supreme as one of the era's most prominent bankers. Thus, Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a child of the ghetto, ascended to become a legend, unperturbed by the prejudices and limitations that marked his humble beginnings. As the mantle passed from Meyer Amschel to Nathan Rothschild following the former's demise, the family empire not merely endured, but flourished, speaking to the father's ingenuity and the son's tenacity. As mentioned, Meyer Amschel's association with William IX, the hereditary prince of Hesse Castle, forms the first core part of the controversies surrounding the Rothschilds' power structure. The story goes that when Napoleon ousted William from power in the 1790s, he entrusted his vast fortune to Meyer Amschel for safeguarding, resulting in Rothschild's own poverty while preserving the prince's riches. This tale, although reportedly fictional, does harbour an element of truth. Meyer Amschel's real duty to William wasn't guarding gold, but overseeing his English investments. Appointed as Hofaktor by William IX in 1769, Meyer Amschel supervised the prince's estate and tax collection. This fruitful alliance, coupled with the prince's opulence, formed the cornerstone of the Rothschild dynasty, eventually gaining a commanding presence in European finance and banking. Thus, this association with William IX propelled Mayer Amschel's third son, Nathan Rothschild, onto the path of success. Born on September 16, 1777, in the confines of Frankfurt, Nathan Rothschild's childhood spent within the Frankfurt ghetto also left an indelible mark. Under his father's tutelage, the young Nathan learned the family trade, banking, and absorbed the sense of unity pervading the Jewish community of Frankfurt. Commissioned to England in his 20s by his father, Nathan rapidly ascended to prominence, overseeing William IX's English investments and, in time, establishing himself as a banking titan in London. Now, a pivotal event took place in 1806 when Nathan tied the knot with Hannah Barrett Cohen. This strategic intermarriage afforded him an elevated social standing and a network of influential business contacts. Hannah, hailing from a prosperous family of linen traders, was born in 1783. Her father, Levi Barrett Cohen, had migrated to London from Amsterdam in 1770, achieving some repute as a merchant. In fact, the House of Cohen had prior business transactions with Nathan's father, the aforementioned Mayer Amschel. Specifically, upon Nathan's arrival in London in 1798, he was recommended to the Cohen family for an informal apprenticeship. Now their marriage indeed helped Nathan gain social stature and business connections. Hannah exceeded the traditional expectations of a Rothschild wife, participating actively in business and advisory roles. Her financial prowess was acknowledged, and she was deemed a formidable business partner. Thus, her marriage to Nathan not only opened a treasure trove of valuable connections, but also helped to catalyze the growth and triumph of the Rothschild banking dynasty. Now, by 1810, the family enterprise had evolved into Mayer Amschel Rothschild and Sons. Nearing the twilight of his life, Mayer Amschel would issue a groundbreaking decree from his deathbed. The family business was to be the exclusive property of his 5 sons, a dictate that was stringently followed by his successors. Now, in the clandestine cobwebs of Europe's politico-economic circles, the Rothschild dynasty were no strangers. Like silent puppet masters, they manipulated the game of power with panache, their financial roots entangling the continent's elite. Men of power danced, their strings delicately controlled by these generous patrons, either through promising investment gambits or hush-hush exchanges of illicit wealth. Ominously, the elder Rothschild, Amschel, was once caught musing, "As Jews, our fate is to buy our way through or watch the Gentiles take the lead." These subtle maneuvers, while drawing criticism, nonetheless amplified the family's reach, fortifying their success. Prominent among their web of debtors was the exiled King Louis XVIII. The maestro of their financial orchestra at the time, Nathan Rothschild, brokered a loan of £200,000 for the British Crown, facilitating the monarch's grand return to France in 1814. Yet, like any true political chess master, their benevolence came with a ticking time bomb. Nathan demanded a prompt repayment, with a handsome interest, 3 years later. Thus, the Rothschilds weaved a network of loans and investments, their tendrils reaching out to key political players like Wilhelm von Humboldt in the 1820s, promising them long-term gains. Now their most invaluable asset was the perpetually penniless Austrian statesman Clemens von Metternich, a regular recipient of the Rothschilds' fiscal generosity. In return for their assistance, Metternich provided them with vital political intelligence and business opportunities, whilst also championing their cause for Jewish emancipation in Frankfurt. The extraordinary loan of 900,000 gulden, extended to Metternich after his staunch support of the Frankfurt Jewish community, however, raised a few skeptical eyebrows. This alliance bore fruit in the form of a regular exchange of classified information between Metternich and Salomon Rothschild. But the partnership was not without its critics. The unfortunate, self-inflicted end of David Parish and the collapse of his enterprise, Fries and Company, were blamed on the Rothschilds' burgeoning influence and their newfound alliance with Metternich. These intriguing affairs cast a shadow over the Rothschild name, painting them as puppet masters of corruption, a dark reputation nurtured by business rivalry and leveraging the anti-Semitic sentiment of the time. Additionally, in the world of art patronage, the Rothschilds wielded an equally formidable influence. Over the years, they amassed a treasure trove of artistic gems, their collection becoming a symbol of their prestige. For example, a fondness for the 17th century Dutch masters was a family trait. James Rothschild in 1840 secured Rembrandt's renowned The Standard Bearer, placing this jewel in the crown of their collection at the Grand Salon of Rue Lafitte. However, contrary to popular belief, their interest was not simply confined to the classics. In their world, art was more than an investment. It was a symbol of their wealth, yes, but also a way of life. It gave life to their stately mansions and bespoke of their refined taste. Music, too, was integral to their repertoire. For instance, Nathan Rothschild, in January 1828, engaged the services of the acclaimed Ignaz Moscheles, Felix Mendelssohn's mentor. Their salons regularly echoed with the sublime melodies of masters like Mendelssohn, Liszt, Hall, and Joachim. The Parisian chapter of Polish legend Frédéric Chopin's storied career even began under the patronage of none other than James Rothschild. In fact, such was the depth of their involvement in the world of music that even legendary anti-Semite Richard Wagner, it was rumored, banked with the Rothschilds. Despite converting their fortune into far-reaching influence, the Rothschilds remained true to their Jewish faith. Karl Rothschild was said to have clearly asserted that their wealth was a Jewish legacy. They championed the cause of Jewish advancement, in stark contrast to the prevalent misconception that they were indifferent to the hardships faced by their fellow Jews. In truth, they contributed generously to Jewish charities and schools. Their rise to prominence did not obscure their humble origins or the suffering of their brethren. They fought for their community's equal rights, formed strategic alliances, and enhanced their standing as a remarkable family, far surpassing their material success. Now espionage, a nemesis lurking in every shadow, posed an escalating threat, especially when their dispatches were laced with elements of political subterfuge or potentially lucrative information. Thus, 1814 marked a significant shift towards the employment of private couriers, a move calculated to outmaneuver this constant menace. This past era before instantaneous electronic communication was dominated by the indispensable private courier, and in the Rothschilds' grand scheme of affairs, they formed the essential backbone of their vast international communication grid. They were the trusted guardians of priceless information, the lifeblood that breathed power into the sprawling body of the Rothschilds' financial empire. Thus, the couriers were more than just bearers of messages. They were crucial defenders against breaches of information. You see, in a world where a whiff of news could alter the course of markets and fortunes, their private network rendered the velocity of communication as vital as the information itself. As adaptable as they were essential, couriers had the flexibility to hasten their delivery based on the family's exigencies. Moreover, these couriers were a symbol of the global extent of the Rothschilds. In an age fragmented by national demarcations, linguistic obstacles, and complex geopolitics, the family's private couriers formed a seamless, efficient network that spanned the breadth of Europe. By the winter of 1827, Solomon Rothschild, Nathan's brother, had found this system deeply rooted in their operations in Vienna. It was a system so exquisitely refined that it elicited the envy of their competitors, triggering a slew of imitations. Nevertheless, for a good part of the early 19th century, the Rothschilds' courier service remained unrivaled in delivering premier service to diplomats and statesmen. This intricate communications network is the second core pillar of discussions involving a clandestine society revolving around the Rothschilds. The audacity of their influence, the lightning speed of their operations, and the depth of their couriers' reach fuels historical investigations of a more covert, more nefarious global network. Indeed, the family harnessed their mighty infrastructure for their advantage. However, the extent to which it qualifies as a larger global plan is at your discretion, viewers. Additionally, while this out-of-family network undeniably paved their path to eminence, the true brilliance lay in the synergy among the 5 Rothschild houses in London, Frankfurt, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. This multinational matrix, the world's largest banking structure, was the conduit for their financial influence throughout the European economic epicenters. However, the empire, admittedly built on secret family dealings, private communications, and a vast global network, was left reeling after the sudden death of Nathan Rothschild. Nathan's influential hand had harmoniously orchestrated the operations of the five houses. "We owe him everything, really everything," his brother Karl had once admitted. His sudden departure in 1836 jolted the family, and with the markets already on a downward spiral, it only seemed to hasten the looming financial crisis. As the calendar pages of the 1830s were torn away, the illustrious Rothschilds shifted their formidable might towards the pulsating arena of industrial finance. With a calculated gamble, they invested a lion's share of their resources into the construction of railways, effectively grasping the helm as they navigated the birth of France's railway system. Yet their commanding role was seen through the dark spectacles of suspicion by a burgeoning faction of the media, resulting in an alarming rise in negative sentiment towards the distinguished family. The year 1846, a harbinger of ill fortune, saw the Rothschilds' reputation gravely marred. A train, under their aegis, hurtled off the tracks and screeched to a disastrous end, claiming 14 innocent lives in its ruinous aftermath. This catastrophic event served as a catalyst, positioning the Rothschilds at the center of the intensifying social revolution of 1848. Public sentiment, balancing on a razor's edge between civil rights and an ever-widening chasm of wealth inequality, began to broil with antipathy towards them. The family's impregnable fortress in Frankfurt came under assault. Windows splintered under the wrath of angry stones, the sacrosanctity of their haven violated. More misfortune pursued the Rothschilds as the plunging value of government securities, which formed the bedrock of their investments, threatened to tip them over the edge of financial abyss. The fickle finger of fate extended a lifeline to the London household, sheltering it from the revolutionary tempest. This fortuitous turn of events enabled the London Rothschilds to extend a crucial lifeline to their kin, preserving their legacy from total obliteration. In the decades that unfurled between 1850 and 1914, the Rothschilds grew their influence like tendrils reaching across banking, politics, and a myriad of significant events. Quite notably, in this time, they became titanic movers in the world's political machine. A key instance of this influence is Lionel de Rothschild's role in financing the construction of the Suez Canal. You see, initially the Suez Canal Company found it challenging to sell shares internationally. Countries including Britain, the United States, Austria, and Russia didn't buy any shares, whereas all French shares were rapidly sold in France. Opening for shipping on November 17, 1869, the Suez Canals significantly influenced global trade and contributed to an increase in the European colonization of Africa. Ismail Pasha, Said Pasha's successor, was compelled to sell Egypt's shares due to mounting external debts. To facilitate this, in 1875, the London banking house of N.M. Rothschild and Sons lent £4 million to the British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli, acting for the British government. This facilitated the purchase of the Suez Canal shares. Now, the Rothschild family's role in the Suez Canal project is just a snapshot of their vast influence in international finance and politics. The Rothschilds additionally played a crucial role in the emancipation of Brazil from Portugal. The agreement stipulated that the nascent Brazilian government must remit £2 million to Portugal as a cost of freedom. The monumental task of marshalling this sum fell to the finance titans, N.M. Rothschild and Sons. Commandeering the London market with their deft strategies, they successfully amassed the required capital for the newly anointed Empire of Brazil. Furthermore, the family's reach extended even into Africa, bankrolling Cecil Rhodes in the establishment of Rhodesia. Additionally, when the Russo-Japanese War cast its shadow, the Japanese government turned to the London and Paris branches of the Rothschilds. Their consortium responded by issuing Japanese war bonds worth an astonishing £11.5 million. Thus, in this era, the name Rothschild resonated with echoes of extraordinary political power, financial might, and opulent decadence. In fact, their empire, encompassing at least 41 palaces of unparalleled luxury, led the British Chancellor of the Exchequer, David Lloyd George, to assert that Nathan, Lord Rothschild, was the most powerful man in Britain by 1909. Now, as the opening decades of the 20th century opened, they brought a seismic shift to the Rothschild dynasty, their erstwhile harmony fractured by the emergence of national taxation. The unified ledger of commerce they once proudly held fractured, causing their various arms to diverge, establishing themselves as autonomous banking entities. The once illustrious quintet of brothers and their offspring had by the time of the First Great War become a memory rather than a reality. It was the ominous rise of the Third Reich during the 1930s, however, that truly rattled the Rothschild fortress. The Austrian wing found itself teetering on a precipice with the annexation of Austria in 1938, with the family coerced into selling their banking operation for mere pence on the pound. The Rothschilds found themselves a hunted clan, with the exception of Louis Rothschild, who, caught in the National Socialists' snare, only secured his freedom after a considerable family-funded ransom. When Louis was finally granted exit in March 1939, the Third Reich set its sights on SM von Rothschild, placing it under ruthless administration, their estates plundered by high-ranking Austrian museum officials. The spoils of war left the Austrian Rothschilds with little more than remnants of their once formidable assets. The Second World War's ruthless march claimed France next, the French Rothschilds cast into a storm of uncertainty as their assets were seized in the iron grip of German occupation. Despite their bank being restored in the war's aftermath, the oncoming tide of socialism under President François Mitterrand in 1982 posed a further challenge of insurmountable proportions. The mighty Rothschild behemoth found itself subsumed yet again, this time in the churning waters of nationalization. And then came their monumental lapse, America. The New York Times astutely highlighted the Rothschilds' failure to seize the bountiful opportunity that lay across the Atlantic. Evelyn de Rothschild, with a sense of heavy regret, conceded that in spite of their illustrious lineage in international finance, we never grappled with the American challenge, and that remains one of our family's most glaring missteps. He further lamented that even though the Rothschilds had established a foothold in the US through various investments and alliances, they had never truly broken ground as they had in Europe. This lack of penetration into the American financial landscape marked a profound strategic shortcoming for a family that had so often defined the contours of global finance. Today, the heralded progeny of the Rothschild lineage, a name still entwined in wealth and power, is first embodied by the baronial figure of Jacob Rothschild, the fourth Baron Rothschild, British peer and an ace in the arena of investment banking. His resplendent persona radiates in the sphere of the Rothschild banking dynasty that still stretches across continents and centuries. RIT Capital Partners, a titan of financial trust under his chairmanship, stands tall on the London Stock Exchange with an estimable net asset value in the vicinity of £2 billion. The scales of wealth also still tip in his favour, placing his net worth at an extraordinary $5 billion. On the ladies' side, the noteworthy player in the family is Lady Lynn Forrester de Rothschild, an American-British billionaire entrepreneur with a net worth surpassing the $674 million mark. She rules as the CEO of E.L. Rothschild LLC. The boards of the Estée Lauder Companies and the Economist Newspaper Limited are additionally graced by her presence, as are the International Advisory Council of Asia House, the Council on Foreign Relations in the United States, and Chatham House in the UK. Next, we have James Rothschild, a man whose marital bond with Nicky Hilton extends the influence of the illustrious Rothschild name into the world of fashion and power couples. Born in our lovely capital London in 1985, James boasts an impressive pedigree as the sole son of the late Amschel Rothschild and Anita Patience Guinness. James's journey in finance began with a tenure at the family's N.M. Rothschild & Sons Limited as an investment banker, but currently James commands the title of founder and managing partner at True Arrow Partners, a firm with a global footprint in the technological growth sector. His net worth stands today at roughly $1.3 billion. The family has also helmed a group of banks managed by Rothschild Continuation Holdings since 2003. With a complex structure of control involving multiple holding companies, and the guiding hand of Baron David René de Rothschild. These banks remain a symbol of the Rothschilds' still pervasive influence across Europe. Thus, from the humble origins of Meyer Amschel Rothschild in the heart of Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, to the myriad tendrils of influence spread by his descendants across continents and centuries, the Rothschild legacy, like a grand symphony, resonates through the ages. Their lineage, sewn into the very fabric of modern history, embodies the most legendary saga of a family with new money, indeed maturing into old money. As you might have heard, or seen with your very own eyes as you take your afternoon strolls along the Thames, a seismic shift is rumbling through London's illustrious centres of financial power and political intrigue. Long ensconced as the playground of Britain's old money aristocracy, this enclave of enduring privilege is being infiltrated by an avant-garde of global wealth. In our 21st century, the old guard, families with historic ties to fertile lands and political dynasties, finds itself jostling for room with a rising wave of foreign financiers. You see, the landscape is no longer solely coloured by long-standing British families like the Grosvenors and Cadogans, but by new players with contrasting cultures and vastly different recipes for the direction of the capital of the United Kingdom. Long-held bastions of hereditary affluence are witnessing the influx of a new cadre of economic titans, moguls from Moscow and magnates from the Middle East. And they're not waiting for an invitation. They're knocking down doors and making their presence felt, leaving the old elites contemplating their place in a rapidly evolving paradigm. How did this all happen so quickly? What led the British old money crowd to loosen their grip on power in just a few short decades? In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll answer those questions and more as we describe why old money United Kingdom families sold London to global oligarchs. In the labyrinthine financial corridors of London's historic elite, the underpinnings are as nuanced as they are enduring, intimately knit with the political and economic pulse of the city. It's a terrain marked by colossal inheritances spanning multiple generations, underscored by financial behemoths that comprise a diverse range of assets, from stately lands to equities and international pursuits. But pivot your gaze toward emerging power centers like Moscow or the Middle East, and a different narrative emerges. Unlike London's pedigreed aristocracy, which draws its affluence largely from hereditary opulence and familial legacies, the nouveau riche of these regions have a genesis rooted in contemporary wealth gained by a shrewd and no-holds-barred entrepreneurial spirit. Be it the windfalls of oil, the dynamism of technology, or the levers of political affinity, their ascendance is more immediately economic, less marinated in the intricate choreography of societal and governance histories that have shaped London's old money hierarchy. For instance, among London's wealthiest individuals, you'll find people like Alisher Usmanov from Russia, reportedly worth more than £12 billion, who made his fortune in metals and mining, or Egyptian multi-billionaire Nassef Sawiris, known for his investments in construction and chemicals. And this distinction between the London old guard and the new money players isn't merely academic. It extends into how these elites maneuver their influence. London's aristocracy wields significant financial power, which they channel into an ecosystem of philanthropic foundations and direct political influence. Their strategy serves two purposes: preserving their enormous wealth and carefully shaping their social and political standing. It's not just about skyline-altering real estate. Their imprints are indelibly etched into London's basic frameworks, from public utilities to laws and popular opinion. Additionally, scions of London aristocracy, families like the Grosvenor and the Cadogan, have been arbiters in the political landscape, historically ensconced in the House of Lords and adept at lobbying. Beyond this, they've been visionaries of urban landscapes, their sprawling real estate portfolios in prime territories like Mayfair and Belgravia serving not just as centres of influence, but as a catalyst for the city's very design. In the cosmopolitan tableau of New London, Russian oligarchs and Middle Eastern moguls are carving out their own spheres of influence with striking speed. Unlike the city's pedigreed elite, whose influence has evolved over centuries within the corridors of governance, these newcomers are fast-tracking their way into political prominence. Their currency, strategic investments in pivotal sectors and hefty political contributions. While London's established elite, have historically curated the city with a long-view stewardship. This new ilk often treats London as another portfolio asset, calibrated for immediate dividends. The shift is more than superficial. It speaks to a profound metamorphosis in the philosophies guiding the city's growth and governance, with the byproduct of this tectonic shift often meaning a dilution of old money strongholds. Long-standing families like the Grosvenors and Cadogans are finding their enclave borders increasingly porous. The drivers of this change are twofold. Firstly, London's marquee real estate has become a global magnet for capital, touted as both a secure and glamorous investment. Secondly, the financial muscle of some of these heritage families is waning, partly due to shifting tax landscapes and the exorbitant costs of estate upkeep. Foreign capital not only elevates property values, but also infuses much-needed liquidity. The catch? The guardians of London's traditional epicenters must now mingle with a new cadre of global titans who bring their own set of cultural and fiscal mores. Enter the City of London, colloquially known as the Square Mile. A nexus for global commerce and banking, its relationship with London's aristocratic families is fascinatingly complex. These families have often been the invisible hand, owning the land that fueled the city's financial engines. Their fortunes were inextricably tied to the rise and fall of the city's economic vitality. Yet the relationship was far from one-dimensional. The city's prosperity indirectly fattened the coffers of these families, while their land and capital allowed the city to proliferate. They were both puppeteers and beneficiaries in London's intricate socio-economic performance, holding sway in ways that cannot be easily erased. As we look ahead, the question looms, in this evolving landscape, will the newcomers find a way to weave their own legacy as seamlessly into London's complex tapestry? No, it won't be a simple insertion. It is a reconfiguration of the city's very DNA, marking a new epoch in our capital's history. Now, in a financial dynamic characterized by shifting tides, London's storied old money families have found themselves navigating a relentless sea of economic and political challenges throughout the 20th century. These pressures have siphoned off their traditional financial heft and political clout, while simultaneously creating a vacuum for international capital to flood in. The Crucible, a series of pivotal moments that changed the very foundation of their wealth. The repercussions of World War I served as an initial reckoning. The conflict's economic drain led many blue-blooded families to part with prized assets, from expansive estates to cherished art collections, just to uphold their lifestyle. The 1911 Parliament Act then chipped away at their political leverage, curbing the influence of the House of Lords, a realm where many had historical seats. But perhaps the most transformative change lay in the realm of finance. With the outbreak of World War I, the Bank of England abandoned the gold standard, a bulwark of predictability for those with deep pockets. The move to fiat currency led to a cascade of ramifications. First off, the ballooning money supply drove inflation, eroding the real value of old money assets like bonds and even depreciating the worth of their grand estates. Secondly, the shift injected a new dose of volatility into the economic environment. The pound, now untethered from gold, became more susceptible to market whims and policy missteps. These families, long accustomed to investing in stable assets, found themselves on shaky ground. The new currency landscape was directly tied to government stability and economic vitality, rendering their wealth more vulnerable to economic shocks. Third, the financial metamorphosis heralded a structural economic shift. Traditional wellsprings of affluence, like land and agriculture, began to wane in profitability. On the other hand, emerging sectors like manufacturing and services rose to prominence. The aristocracy, slow to pivot, saw their economic might diminish. Lastly, the advent of a more flexible monetary policy, including the Bank of England's newfound ability to set interest rates, introduced another layer of complexity for these families. No longer could they count on a predictable economic landscape. They had to adapt to more levers being pulled in the management of their wealth. But the trials didn't end there. World War II further strained resources, compelling even more families to surrender ancestral lands. Then came post-war policies that turned the screws on hereditary wealth, exorbitant inheritance taxes, and the Labour government's commitment to a welfare state. So here we stand, amidst a transformed economic and political topography. While the heritage of old money families remains an ineradicable part of London's identity, the question that looms large is, can they adapt fast enough to maintain their historical role in this ever-evolving landscape? Now, in the autumnal haze of 1986, London's financial heartbeat underwent an extraordinary change. This transformation, known as the Big Bang, was a suite of deregulatory reforms championed by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The changes tore down barriers to entry in financial services, introduced computerized trading, and magnetized foreign capital toward the city's bustling trading floors. While this flurry of change created new empires of affluence, it left the British old money families grappling with an evolving landscape that seemed increasingly inhospitable to their traditional influence. The symbolic moment came when Prince Al-Walid bin Talal acquired a significant stake in the Savoy Hotel in 1988. Iconic British institutions were suddenly becoming the acquisitions of wealthy foreign investors. A sensation of vulnerability permeated the walls of grand manors and estates, long considered inviolable sanctuaries. These large estates became burdensome to maintain financially, particularly during the era of rising costs that characterized the late 80s. Reluctantly, many British elite families converted their ancestral homes into public attractions or commercial enterprises. Each entry ticket sold and each business transaction conducted eroded centuries of family legacy. And still, by the conclusion of the 1980s, many families remained in precarious financial straits. But if the 80s were rocky, the 90s were tumultuous. The decade opened with a recession, pulling down property values and putting a financial stranglehold on old money families. The infamous Black Wednesday in 1992 was a further blow. The UK's exit from the European exchange rate mechanism precipitated a devaluation of the British pound, wreaking havoc on long-term investments. The financial arena continued to evolve. Hedge funds and private equity firms emerged as new conduits for investment, diverting resources from traditional asset pools. Tony Blair's ascension in 1997 added salt to the wound. His Labour government's tax policies, especially those targeting capital gains and inheritance, compelled further liquidation of cherished family assets. As the millennium approached, the old money families of Britain found themselves at a crossroads in a substantially altered financial landscape. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw London wrestling with an existential conundrum as the British aristocracy's influence waned in the face of a new wave of global wealth. High-profile Russian oligarchs, such as Roman Abramovich, began claiming stakes in prized London assets. The acquisition of Chelsea Football Club in 2003 by Abramovich was a clear demarcation, announcing that London's economic and cultural stage was now open to the global elite. Investment rationales were diverse. Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem's purchase of P&O, a maritime and ports company, showcased strategic long-term planning. It was not just about buying assets, but about embedding oneself in global networks of power and influence. These investments, for players like Sulayem, were bridges to greater geopolitical leverage, crossing national boundaries in their reach. Other figures like Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim bin Jaber Al Thani adopted a different strategy, using London as a canvas for portfolio diversification. Purchases spanned from real estate to financial entities, a blend calculated to minimize risk while maximizing gains. The moves not only fortified their financial standings, but wove them into the complex fabric of the British economic landscape. But their influence stretched further than the real estate sector. Increasing foreign influence over London's economic trajectory sparked debates over British sovereignty and identity, elevating foreign wealth into a hot-button political issue. London's neighbourhoods, too, underwent dramatic alterations. Globalization uprooted family-owned shops and local pubs, making room for boutique stores and high-end residences. The alterations led to the displacement of long-term residents, changing the character of the city. Perhaps the most disquieting aspect was the looming question of how foreign wealth might be swaying local politics. There was a growing unease that policy decisions were being tailored to suit these newly influential inhabitants. The presence of international capital was no longer confined to the corporate sphere. It had seeped into the corridors of governmental power. As London's economic and ownership landscapes metamorphosed, so did its socio-political identity. The foreign billionaires, brandishing their financial influence like artists with brushes, were recoloring London's identity in intricate and subtle ways. Though London had always been a hub of global exchange, the new millennium introduced layers of complexity that left even seasoned analysts pondering the future of London's identity. The transformation marked not merely an alteration, but a profound questioning of what it meant for London to be British in this increasingly interconnected world. Social class. That enigmatic, all-encompassing and life-altering term that, for better or worse, has been synonymous with the history of our lovely island for almost 1,000 years. Indeed, the United Kingdom's class system holds particular global notoriety, with the notions of monarchy, landed gentry, and the working class continuing to define the contours of British society to this very day. George Orwell himself noted this dynamic in 1941, calling Britain quite simply the most class-ridden society under the sun. Now, of course, all of this is not to say that other countries do not have a social class hierarchy. Far from it. Most countries possess a complex system of status or hereditary caste. However, while many advanced nations have proactively, whether through legislation or all-out war, attempted to collapse their historical class system, the United Kingdom has held tightly to this structural archetype. As Helmut Schmidt, the then Chancellor of West Germany, put it in 1975, if one asks oneself what are the true reasons for the differentiated development of societies and economies between the British and most ones on the European continent, I think it has something to do with the fact that British society, much more than the Scandinavian, German, Austrian and Dutch societies, is characterized by class struggle. This is true for both sides of the upper class as well as for the working classes. Yet, the presence of this persistent hierarchy does not make the British social structure entirely transparent, with nuance abound and the so-called unwritten rules of the class system in Britain confounding many across the globe. Thus, in today's video at Old Money Luxury, we'll lift the curtain on the Western world's most famous system of social class, guiding you first through the history of how each stratum developed, and then providing you with a template of how social class in the United Kingdom exists as it stands today. But first, we must turn back the clock a bit to learn where the first lines of social demarcation on Albion were formed. To fully comprehend the intricacies of the British class system, we must revisit the pivotal Norman conquest of 1066. During this defining moment, William the Conqueror led his Normans to triumph at Hastings. This decisive win began a slow and gradual takeover of the area, not without fierce Saxon resistance, giving rise to years of guerrilla warfare. In due time, the relentless Normans secured control over England, granting lands to loyal knights, who evolved into the ruling class. This newly formed elite, driven by territorial gains, constructed grand cathedrals and castles that can still be seen today, including Canterbury Cathedral, Durham Cathedral, the Tower of London, and even the structure from which our royal family gets its current name, Windsor Castle. Now, it's from this Norman gentry that our first current stratum of modern British society is derived. You see, even in the 21st century, aristocratic families like the Percys and Grosvenors, tied to vast estates across the country, have roots reaching back to the Norman conquerors. But more on that later. Let's get back to our history. The Saxons, in contrast to the Normans, were reduced to a lower status, grappling with an almost apartheid existence. Yet the acute division began to blur as the Normans, more enticed by land than lineage, married Saxon women. These unions began a fusion of Norman and Saxon traditions, progressively erasing the lines between them, laying the groundwork for a ruling class. Across centuries, the once clear distinctions between Normans and Saxons gradually faded through mingling and marriage. The Normans, symbolized by the Plantagenet flower, continued ruling over lands and castles filled with Saxon peasants. This merger, evolving over hundreds of years, led the growing nation from sheer inequality to a more harmonious society, imprinting a unique mark on England's social structure. In the Norman conquest's wake, English society was tightly defined, with Normans as aristocrats and Saxons as peasants. But within this distinction, a hybrid group emerged, acting both as peasants and professionals. From these original hierarchical relationships lies the core of the English class system, enduring with minor tweaks, continually shaping the English social order. Indeed, that legacy continues to define the nation's cultural fabric, even today. Now, the Black Death of the 14th century served as a remarkable pivot, reforming England's social structure and significantly altering the country's demographic makeup. This pestilence obliterated around half the population, leaving indelible imprints on the social hierarchy. And unexpectedly, it led to a linguistic shift. While the ruling class had spoken French and the Saxons had spoken English, the Black Death weakened the ruling class's grip on French, making English the common language. Some argue this was further bolstered by the gradual merging and marriage between Normans, Plantagenets, and Saxons. Now, this period witnessed the emergence of an English identity, still class divided, but with the rise of a new class. Specifically, those managing lands for their Norman lords symbolized a nascent middle class. Additionally, from the 14th to the 15th century, maritime trade began to thrive, giving birth to a merchant class that slowly started accumulating wealth, subtly starting to restructure society. Furthermore, the Black Death's impact extended to the peasantry's economic standing. A decline in labor availability led to increased wages, significantly improving their living conditions. While the social structure remained distinctively layered, the stratification persisted primarily through intra-aristocratic marriages, land inheritance, and continued baronial titles. Marriages with commoners were deliberately avoided to maintain class lines. Despite the peasantry's improved situation, they stayed landless, overshadowed by inherited wealth. Within this stringent structure, an English identity was forming, marked by a recognizable upper class of gentry and aristocrats, burgeoning middle-class traces, and an enduring working class of peasants. This hierarchy's rigidity, where marriage across social levels was unthinkable, solidified the class system for generations. Furthermore, the intricate interplay between royalty and aristocracy was pivotal in maintaining this equilibrium. The king's decisions were judiciously weighed to ensure loyalty and satisfaction among ruling nobles. This complex structure extended beyond the king, intertwining relationships from monarchy to peasantry, securing a social order that still resonates in the multifaceted fabric of British society. Thus, the Black Plague indeed flipped the social chessboard, the effects of which linger even now. Now, the English Civil War serves as a remarkable chapter in British history, set against a complex backdrop. Unlike some European revolutionary events where nobles faced losses or banishment, the entrenched class framework and long-standing aristocratic privileges in Britain remained resilient. The societal structure saw a recalibration after the Black Death, enhancing peasant lives and beginning the formation of English identity. The aristocracy's hold on land, the emergence of a managerial middle-class tier, and the delicate balance between the king and ruling class contributed to an enduring social order, one still shaping Britain today. Moving forward, England's transformation from mainly Catholic to Protestant, with lingering Catholic elements, partly ignited the Civil War during the mid-17th century. These conflicts, from 1640 to the early 1650s, were framed as Crown versus Parliament. Parliament, though termed the House of Commons, mainly consisted of aristocrats and gentry, opposing the king's divine right belief. The vital distinction between England and the continent lay in the aristocracy's fate. Unlike elsewhere, England's aristocrats endured. In contrast, the French Revolution led to the violent dismantling of the aristocracy, resulting in a complete transformation of the societal hierarchy. The German revolutions of the 19th century, while less dramatic than France's, aimed for greater democracy and social mobility, seeking to diminish the influence of the traditional aristocracy. These continental revolutions marked significant ruptures with the past and paved the way for new societal norms and structures, unlike in England when parliamentarians, chiefly from aristocratic and gentry backgrounds, retained their status connected to their heritage. Oliver Cromwell, descended from a Norman knight of William the Conqueror's time, embodies this. Now, while sometimes seen as aristocracy versus commoners, the Civil War was fundamentally a clash between the aristocracy and royal power, with the aristocrats' victory explaining their continued hold. Still, the story has added layers. The apparent rigidity of England's class system may be misunderstood. No historical point required a violent overthrow of the aristocracy, largely because they continued to rule over the other classes. This unique trajectory influenced the social order distinctively, preserving traditions that still resonate in British society. Additionally, the absence of a need for forceful aristocratic overthrow extended to control over the church. Bishops and archbishops were often aristocrats' children, making higher church positions unattainable for commoners. This hereditary structure reinforced social barriers, restricting mobility and strengthening the existing order. After the English Civil War, a tranquil era began, with English privateers eagerly seeking trading opportunities in places like India and the Caribbean. These commercial pursuits set the stage for the British Empire, initiating imports of commodities like sugar, tea, and coffee. The rise of this mercantile class, often originating as commoners or mid-level managers who gained wealth through skilled trades, signaled significant evolution. Aristocrats, too, capitalized on this economic shift, investing in these bold ventures. Now, contrary to popular belief, the British Empire's foundation was fueled more by trade than colonization. For example, the British East India Company led in securing a presence in India, not the royals or nobility first, focusing on acquiring and exporting spices, tea, and goods. This humble start, driven by the desire to protect and expand trade, led to control over vast territories. Thus, Britain's empire was essentially commercial. Its island geography and naval superiority allowed the Royal Navy to protect vital sea routes from South America to the Caribbean, India, and Africa. This economic and military growth bolstered Britain's global influence, but sparked conflicts with other European powers, especially the Spanish, French, and Dutch. Intriguingly, the Portuguese remained friendly, an exception in Europe where territorial and resource battles often sparked aggression. A century of wars between Britain, Spain, France, and the Dutch laid groundwork for global conflict. The intense English-French rivalry, with Britain winning through better fundraising, led to financial Britain, including the City of London, primarily financing the navy, conquering lands, and creating trade routes. Again, here we see coming to the fore a benchmark for the growth of a societal stratum present in modern Britain's social class structure. Now, simultaneously, the Industrial Revolution was taking shape in England's Midlands, with innovators like Quakers leading changes in iron and steel. This era marked Britain's golden age as national wealth grew, benefiting not only aristocrats, but also a rising middle class of merchants, financiers, and bankers. Unlike traditional aristocrats, this middle class's wealth was industrial and commercial, not landed. Their rise didn't lead to revolution. Many indeed acquired titles, joining the ruling elite. 19th century figures like Sir John Ellerman, Thomas Holloway, and George Cadbury, among others, resembled modern tycoons like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, amassing fortunes through trade, not land. These industrial pioneers, despite vast wealth, still often sought aristocratic titles, drawn by the allure of status and prestige. Their fortunes might have outshone the old aristocracy, but the appeal of its cachet remained irresistible. The transformation of peasants into urban working-class individuals, ignited by the Industrial Revolution, signified a crucial shift in Britain's social framework. With the British Empire's rise, the traditional aristocratic wealth rooted in land began to wane, contrasting sharply with the burgeoning prosperity derived from trade, invention, and industry. The diminishing control of the aristocracy saw their fortunes decline, while the middle and upper middle classes grew. Even some nouveau riche sought to align with aristocratic ranks by purchasing titles, yet the appeal of aristocratic status continued, despite its fiscal fall. Urbanization, prompted by factories in cities like Birmingham, Manchester, and London, led to massive rural-to-urban migration, giving birth to the modern working class. Often confined to stringent conditions, this shift ignited calls for reform, and wealthy industrialists like Rowntree and Lever emerged as advocates for workers' rights. The 20th century saw the evolution of landless peasants into urban workers, extending to occupations in call centers, shops, and banking, reflecting a broader social mobility. Fueled by hard work and accessible education, this transition epitomizes Britain's economic and cultural transformation, intertwining trade, industry, status, and learning. While the transformation from peasants to urban workers solidified the working class, the middle class burgeoned, spurred by industrial, commercial, and imperial growth. The need for managers, legal minds, accountants, and healthcare professionals cultivated a managerial class that arguably seized influence after World War II, undermining traditional aristocratic sway. Post-war and Labour's rise, akin to the US Democrats, and policies taxing aristocratic lands, significantly reshaped wealth distribution and Britain's societal image. This period marked a turning point, with Labour's influence growing alongside the middle class. Concurrently, the upper class, enriched through industry and commerce, also evolved. This complex history, encompassing aristocrats, working and managerial classes, sketches a multifaceted picture of Britain's societal evolution. It reflects shifts not just in wealth but also in cultural values, political dynamics and professional roles, all of which continue to shape modern British society. Now, before we explore the modern 21st century social class structure of the United Kingdom, let's consider the matter of accents, often thought to reveal everything about British social class. In the UK, accent or pronunciation is a key indicator of social class, though not the sole or most crucial one. However, it is indeed true that speech is often the first overtly noticeable class indicator. Working class individuals might have stronger regional accents, such as London's glottal stop, prominent in Guy Ritchie's gangster films, or the distinct accents of Liverpudlians or Mancunians, as heard in actor Stephen Graham or the band Oasis, respectively. Middle-class individuals, ranging from lower to upper middle class, may exhibit regional accents, but these are typically more moderate, while upper middle-class individuals often aim for a more neutral British tone. Upper-class voices, especially those cultivated in elite schools like Eton, may result in a slightly plummy tone, exemplified by conservative commentator Douglas Murray. Remaining aristocrats, mostly educated at the top schools, speak in the original, distinctive, plummy English, often identifying members of the aristocracy or gentry or those aspiring to these ranks. But remember, accent is just one facet of recognizing social class. Marital decisions and aspirational beliefs are even more significant, as we'll see in a moment, so keep these factors in mind as we delve into our structure. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, a full breakdown of the 21st century social structure of the United Kingdom. At the pinnacle of the British social class hierarchy stands, of course, the royal family. Delving into their lineage, it's intriguing to note the German roots of the Windsors. Originally, the House of Windsor bore the Germanic name Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. It was during World War I, due to contemporary anti-German sentiment, that King George V decided to adopt the more anglicised Windsor, named after the iconic Windsor Castle. This historical transition underscores the adaptability of the royal family, a trait ensuring its continued relevance and survival. For many citizens, the royals' modern significance in the social order is cemented by tradition and the feeling of being the head of the body of a nation. With this, the social expectations of the royals include being above the fray of petty cultural and political squabbles, exemplifying the highest decorum and class, and maintaining the keep calm and carry on attitude that our nation ideally embodies. Additionally, they are stewards of vast estates, with royal palaces and crown lands under their purview, establishing the royal crown as Britain's paramount landowner. And while they are beneficiaries of state funding, which supports their regal lifestyles, their roles aren't solely ceremonial. A hallmark of the monarchy is its commitment to public service and representing the nation on the world stage. This ethos is exemplified in King Charles III's naval tenure, his sons Prince William and Prince Harry's military careers, and the charitable endeavours of many other royals, weaving a tapestry of duty and tradition. Next, we have the aristocracy. While their wealth and influence have diminished, they remain a significant presence in British society, reportedly owning an astonishing 20% of the country's land. Many in this class have noble roots in the UK, extending back a millennium, as mentioned in the beginning of this video, with the descendants of William the Conqueror still retaining vast lands. Some aristocrats reside in cities, especially London's posh areas like Kensington and Notting Hill. Still, most occupy ancestral estates stretching from Cornwall to the Shetland Islands, passed down through generations. Should aristocrats find themselves in cities, it's often in esteemed locales, perhaps after selling country estates or converting them into hotels. Moreover, they have marked a global presence in cities like New York, Los Angeles, or even Dubai. However, some aristocrats have recently faced difficulties, with signs of their influence waning and estates decaying, as evidenced by a recent viral video from 60 Minutes Australia that has a thumbnail captioned "Rich People Problems." Despite this, for those still flourishing, The modern aristocracy is keen on maintaining bloodlines, as marriages are strategically arranged among the sons and daughters of aristocratic families, often facilitated through exclusive gatherings. While it might occasionally occur that an aristocratic member marries a commoner, the general expectation is to marry within their social stratum. This deliberate coupling ensures the passage of land and titles, preserving the aristocratic lineage. Just beneath the aristocracy lies the upper middle class, characterized by wealthy professionals and remaining industrialists, even encompassing those who've acquired titles. It's noteworthy to observe, unlike the firm boundaries common with the aristocracy and underclass, the middle classes present substantial mobility. Individuals from the lower middle class may rise into the middle or even upper middle tiers, with the possibility of further ascent to the upper echelons through success. Property ownership, in this context, becomes an anchoring trait, solidifying a privileged status within the multifaceted and nuanced social hierarchy. The significance of esteemed institutions like Oxford and Cambridge, as well as the intriguing matter of purchase titles, lends further texture to this stratum. Figures such as Boris Johnson and David Cameron exemplify this class's economic and political vitality. Dwelling in refined London areas like Notting Hill and Richmond, or situated in charming country locales such as Cheltenham, they lead lifestyles commensurate with their position. The upper middle class, sprung from prosperous merchant families, mirrors more than economic status. It also reflects shared pursuits, culture and values. This interweaving of wealth and tradition within the class sketches a compelling portrait of an essential layer of contemporary British society. Now, the middle class, comprising key sectors like executives and professionals, includes roles such as managers, consultants, lawyers, doctors, and architects. Their living environments are varied, with younger individuals often opting for gentrified city areas filled with trendy boutiques and cultural attractions, while older generations may favor suburban settings, residing in detached or semi-detached residences close to schools and parks. For this class, aspiration stands prominently. These families typically seek a professional, comfortable life and view education, hard work, and networking as pathways to success. They often imbue their children with similar ambitions, fostering a culture of achievement and continuous improvement. Social activities, hobbies, and affiliations with various clubs or organizations might be significant, reflecting their status and interests. Now, the growth of the lower middle class has been spurred by industrialization and commercialization, encompassing individuals in roles such as office workers, clerks, bookkeepers, estate agents, and teachers. Generally residing in more modest suburban areas, this class reflects an aspirational quality, distinguishing them from the working class. Their ambitions frequently center on clerical roles and home ownership, distinctive markers of their lower middle class status. This group is prevalent across Britain, especially on London's fringes and in mid-sized towns like Nottingham, Derby, Brighton, or in cities like Leeds. The essential thing to understand about the lower middle class is their aspiration. They yearn for middle-class status, yet often lack the professional acknowledgement or income to attain it. Then, there's the working class, a demographic evolving with the closure of Britain's traditional industries like shipbuilding, coal mining, and car manufacturing. While these industries have largely receded, a segment of the working class remains engaged in manufacturing. Despite common perceptions, manufacturing still persists in Britain, with working-class members employed in factories, call centres and shops. Some trade professions that were historically associated with this class are actually quite lucrative, subtly indicating that all is not what it seems by strictly adhering to the so-called class structure. Now, today's working class can also be aspirational, even owning their homes, although typically not to the degree of the lower middle class. They may occupy council accommodation or buy houses in economically disadvantaged areas, including inner-city regions outside London such as Birmingham and Manchester, or in working-class towns like Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle, and various Midlands locations. Last, we turn to the underclass, a term borrowed from the Americans, referring to those typically chronically unemployed. This group, in many ways, is an enduring part of British society, sometimes spanning 2 or 3 generations living under the same stagnant condition. Predominantly residing on council estates, akin to American projects, the underclass survives through state benefits or welfare, often supplemented by petty crime. This segment of the population, often found in large cities like London, Manchester, and Glasgow, is marked by a likely persistence in their current economic and social position throughout their lives. Their presence, though not extensive, is notably marked in many inner-city areas, symbolized by large tower blocks, which are seen as the characteristic dwelling places of the underclass. Of course, no discussion on the social structure of the United Kingdom would be complete without a few points on immigration. The Irish have historically been the most prominent immigrant group in the United Kingdom. This migration began continuously from Ireland to Britain and escalated sharply in the 19th century due to the ravages of the Great Famine and the job opportunities created by the Industrial Revolution. A notable illustration of this heritage is the Beatles, who primarily have Irish ancestry. John Lennon's songwriting, including pieces like The Luck of the Irish, and Paul McCartney's maternal lineage, with his grandfather Joseph McCartney born in County Monaghan, Ireland in 1876, highlight this connection. Approximately 6 million people in the UK, or around 10% of the population, have at least one Irish grandparent. Though the Irish-born population in England and Wales has diminished recently, their cultural impact endures. Now, from the mid-20th century onward, immigration from outside of Europe has begun to significantly reshape Britain's class structure. Starting slowly and then increasing exponentially since the 1990s, immigrants have arrived primarily from the Asian subcontinent, sub-Saharan Africa, and the Middle East. These immigrants initially found employment in traditional working-class roles, like retail or the restaurant industry. However, over time, increasingly large numbers of immigrants and their descendants have ascended to nearly every level of the social hierarchy, most notably the Prime Minister himself, Rishi Sunak. The framework of class in Britain, therefore, extends beyond mere accent or financial status. It involves a delicate balance of aspiration, breeding, marriage, education, and inheritance. The interplay of these factors forms a multifaceted picture of social strata, reflecting both rigid barriers and potential pathways for mobility.